Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Goku Reborn with memories of Beerus? Subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And also check the description. So let's begin the story. A low, ashen light struggled through a canopy of dense smoke and swirling dust over a city laid waste. Buildings that once pulsed with life now sagged in ruin, their skeletal frames outlined against a bruised sky. Amid the wreckage, silence reigned. A silence broken only by the crackle of distant fires and the drip of molten debris. In this landscape of destruction, the aftermath of a cataclysmic battle lingered like a ghost that refused to depart. In a narrow alley strewn with shattered glass and twisted rebar, a body lay crumpled among the rubble. At first glance, it appeared as nothing more than another casualty of a conflict too vast to fathom. But as the dust began to settle, a subtle shimmer of energy danced over the prone figure. The man's features, though marred by exhaustion and wounds, bore a familiarity that belied the chaos. A look of calm intensity, now tinged with a quiet ferocity that had not been there before. A sharp inhalation of acrid smoke stirred the man's consciousness. Slowly, as if roused from a deep, feverish slumber, his eyes snapped open. They burned with confusion and an unfamiliar glint, darting across the shattered urban landscape. He tried to push himself up, fingers clawing at the cold, unyielding concrete. Every muscle protested. Pain and disorientation waged their own internal battle. Yet, beneath the surface of agony, a voice stirred, a voice that was not entirely his own. He rose with staggering effort, his boots crunching over broken glass. The figure paused, head cocked as if listening to an unspoken conversation. Within his mind, a presence lingered, a memory, an echo of a being from a different time and realm. It whispered in a tone both commanding and detached, words that melded with his own thoughts. "Rise!" The inner voice intoned, cool and deliberate, resonating like the toll of a distant bell. Goku's heart hammered against his ribs. For a fleeting second, he mistook the voice for a stray fragment of his own consciousness. But the timbre carried something otherworldly, a hint of cosmic authority and unbridled destruction. With trembling determination, he staggered to his feet. The air tasted of char and regret, and each breath pulled memories from depths he had never explored. He surveyed his surroundings. The alley gave way to a main street choked with debris. Hazy outlines of collapsed structures loomed against the ruined skyline. Every surface bore scars of violent conflict, a mosaic of scorch marks, deep fissures in concrete, and splatters of unknown, viscous substances. The city had not merely been damaged, it had been transmuted into a landscape of carnage and rebirth. A stray ember landed on his shoulder, and Goku flinched. His eyes, still adjusting to the dim light, caught sight of a flicker of movement at the edge of his vision. He tensed, muscles coiling as if braced for an assault. The inner voice, now more insistent, urged him forward. "Don't linger in the wreckage. Seek out the remnants. Understand what has been done, and what remains to be done." Goku's brow creased in confusion. "Who are you?" he demanded silently, searching his mind for any clue of another consciousness. Yet the reply came not as an answer but as a quiet directive. "You carry me. I am as much a part of you as your heartbeat. Embrace the truth of this new existence." The words reverberated through his thoughts with unnerving clarity. They were both a comfort and a threat, a duality that underscored the turmoil within. He pressed forward, guided by instinct and the enigmatic murmur of that other presence. Each step he took stirred up the dust of memories, both his own and those not originally his. The conflict inside him felt less like a battle and more like an awakening. Along the ruined street, fragments of conversation reached his ears. A low murmur, almost imperceptible, floated from behind a partially collapsed storefront. Goku's head snapped toward the sound, and he moved with cautious urgency. Rounding a corner, he discovered a man crouched beside a makeshift barricade of debris. The man's face was etched with exhaustion and a weariness born of survival. "Hey!" the stranger called, his voice rough but not unkind. "You all right?" Goku paused, his eyes scanning the stranger's features. The man's voice was pragmatic, grounded in the harsh reality of this ravaged world. "I'm not sure," Goku replied, his tone clipped as if each word was measured against an internal ledger of emerging truths. "I just woke up somewhere." The survivor squinted in the dim light. "Woke up, huh?" Must have been a hard fall. Name's Ryu. Been wandering these ruins for days. Not many folks left who can tell their own story. His words were blunt, yet carried a sympathetic edge. Goku hesitated, fighting the urge to divulge too much of the disjointed fragments that churned within him. I don't remember much, he admitted, voice low. His gaze drifted as if trying to catch a thread of memory, a flash of an ancient battlefield, or perhaps a glimpse of cosmic power swirling behind his eyes. Ryu offered a curt nod. Memory's a luxury in times like these. But listen, if you're trying to piece things together, the city's not safe. There's trouble stirring in the shadows. His eyes, dark and calculating, scanned the horizon. I'd keep your head down, at least until you figure out if you're friend or foe. Before Goku could respond, the inner voice intruded once more. Do not cower. The truth is wrought in the flames of conflict. The cadence of the words carried a weight that silenced his tongue. He looked from Ryu to the unseen threat beyond, the city's ruins whispering secrets of betrayal and resurrection. Ryu frowned, sensing the tension but unable to discern its origin. You got something on your mind? He pressed, stepping closer. You look like you're carrying the weight of a world. Goku's gaze hardened as he met the survivor's eyes. I carry memories that aren't mine, he said quietly, his voice laced with a raw uncertainty. Fragments of a power I never asked for, and voices that tell me to awaken something dangerous. Ryu's lips pressed into a thin line. Danger is all around us now. But if you're offering help, then maybe you're one of us. His tone suggested both suspicion and a grudging respect. The city's split between those who cling to hope and those who see only ruin. Which side do you choose? A chill ran through Goku, not from the cold but from the resonance of the question. He shifted his weight, the ache in his limbs a stark reminder of his rebirth. I'm still deciding, he murmured. I just know that something inside me, something from another life, is trying to take hold. Ryu's eyes narrowed, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. Keep your secrets close. Out here, every word can be a weapon. I've learned that trust isn't given, it's earned. As the two men spoke overhead, the wind shifted and scattered the last remnants of smoke. The city around them exhaled a collective sigh of stillness, as if bracing for what might come next. Goku glanced upward at a sky streaked with bruised purples and violent reds, the colors of a world in turmoil. In that moment, he understood that his rebirth was not an isolated miracle. It was intertwined with the fate of everything around him. He resumed his cautious march through the ruined streets, his steps measured and deliberate. Every fragment of shattered concrete and twisted metal seemed to whisper memories of battles fought and lives lost. In the echo of his footfalls, he detected the subtle hum of dormant energy, remnants of forces that had reshaped the very fabric of existence. The city, once vibrant, now pulsed with a latent tension, a prelude to further conflict. Goku's internal dialogue churned relentlessly. Who am I now? He pondered, his thoughts jagged as broken glass. The voice of Beerus, the calm, imperious echo, answered with a disquieting serenity. You are reborn in a crucible of chaos. Inherit the power, shape the destiny. The stark contrast between the gentle urging of his past self and the destructive allure of this new force left him teetering on an uncertain edge. As he passed the gutted storefront, its glass facade shattered like splintered dreams, he caught sight of a mural still clinging to a crumbling wall. It depicted a soaring figure crowned with radiance, a hero of legend, perhaps, or a ghost of a forgotten era. The artwork was faded but unmistakably vivid, an image of triumph now subverted by the scars of conflict. Goku's eyes lingered on the mural, and for a heartbeat he saw reflections of two beings intertwined within himself, one striving for compassion, the other for absolute dominion. A sudden clatter drew his attention, a clanging metal that reverberated through the empty street. Dropping into a low crouch, Goku scanned the shadows. The sound came again, closer this time, accompanied by the soft shuffle of footsteps. His pulse quickened. There was no time for hesitation, every sense sharpened as he prepared for the unknown. From behind a toppled pile of concrete and twisted rebar, a figure emerged. Dressed in tattered urban attire and carrying a makeshift weapon, the stranger eyed Goku with a blend of curiosity and caution. Who are you? the intruder demanded, voice rough and edged with desperation. You don't look like you belong here. Goku studied the newcomer, a wary calm settling over him despite the internal maelstrom. I woke up in the rubble, he replied, each word measured as if weighing the truth against the danger of exposure. I don't know how I got here. The stranger's gaze flickered between suspicion and pity. That's a lie, he muttered, advancing a step. No one just wakes up in a dead city without a past. His eyes hardened. What's your name? Goku hesitated. The memories, a conflation of his own experiences and those not entirely his, wavered in his mind. I'm not sure, he admitted, his voice tinged with vulnerability that belied his latent strength. A heavy silence stretched between them. The stranger's grip on his weapon tightened as he scrutinized Goku, the tension in the air palpable. Finally, the man said, Names matter in these times. I'm Cole. And if you're telling the truth, you're as lost as the rest of us. Cole's tone was pragmatic, almost weary, like a man who had seen too many false dawns. Before Goku could reply, the internal whisper surged again, its tone now laced with an unsettling blend of command and menace. Do not falter. Embrace the power that courses within you. The words pressed upon him, urging him to cast aside uncertainty and act. Yet, amid the chaos of his reborn self, doubt still lingered. Cole's eyes darted from Goku to the darkened street beyond. You'd best come with me, he said abruptly. There's danger in every shadow, and I don't fancy drawing unwanted attention. His invitation carried an unspoken threat, a choice between tentative alliance and certain peril. Goku's mind raced. The internal voice battled with his own cautious reasoning. He knew little of this man, yet the pragmatic tone in Cole's voice resonated with the raw reality of survival. All right, he said at last, his voice low and firm. Lead the way. Together, they navigated the labyrinthine streets, where the remnants of a once thriving metropolis jutted from the darkness like the bones of an ancient leviathan. The night was punctuated by intermittent bursts of light, the flash of a distant explosion, the glimmer of reflected neon from a half-collapsed billboard. Every step was fraught with uncertainty, every corner a potential ambush. At times, silence reigned between them, each lost in their own thoughts. Goku's inner conflict, though muted in the presence of another soul, remained ever present. In the quiet intervals, the voice of Beerus echoed insistently. Harness the chaos. Let it empower you. And yet another part of him, Goku's inherent kindness and desire for peace, whispered doubts in return. Control it, or it will control you. The streets grew narrower, the rubble denser, until they reached a partially intact overpass. Beneath its fractured arch, the murmur of voices and the scrape of hurried footsteps signaled a congregation of survivors. Goku's gaze flickered to the movement below, a group of individuals huddled in tense clusters, their eyes wary and faces gaunt with hardship. In that moment, the man's inner turmoil deepened. Was he to be an instrument of salvation or a harbinger of ruin? Cole's hand gripped Goku's shoulder briefly, a silent gesture of reassurance or perhaps an assertion of leadership. This is where we set up for the night, he explained quietly, gesturing to a relatively sheltered nook beneath the overpass. We rest, then we move at first light. There's a safe house a few blocks from here. You can get cleaned up, at least for a while. They settled into a cramped space beneath the concrete, where the remnants of discarded belongings and makeshift barricades provided scant shelter. A small fire flickered in a battered metal drum, its light casting harsh, dancing shadows over the tired faces of those who gathered. Goku sat quietly at the edge of the group, his body still trembling with residual pain and uncertainty. The murmurs of conversation and the occasional clink of a broken bottle filled the silence. An older woman, her eyes softened by sorrow yet burning with a fierce resolve, approached him. You look as if you've seen hell, she observed gently. But sometimes hell is all we have left. Her words, though plain-spoken, resonated deeply. Goku could not tell if her tone carried a note of warning or compassion, perhaps both. He met her gaze steadily. I'm not sure what I've seen, he replied honestly. I remember fighting, then nothing, and now, fragments of another life. His voice was a measured cadence, betraying neither his fear nor the burgeoning power within him. The woman studied him for a long moment before replying. "Memories can be both a curse and a guide," she said softly. "Just be careful that they don't lead you astray." Her eyes lingered on his, as if reading a hidden storm behind his calm exterior. Even as the conversation unfolded, the internal dialogue persisted, a constant, almost imperceptible murmur that sought to wrest control. "You must accept what is yours," the voice urged, the tone unwavering and cold. "Do not allow sentiment to dilute the fire within." Yet, as Goku listened to the older woman's words, he felt a stirring of conflict, a battle between the desire to preserve a fragile humanity and the lure of an almost divine, destructive potency. Hours passed in an uneasy truce. The survivors spoke in low, deliberate tones, recounting stories of loss and fleeting hope. Yet, beneath the surface of each tale lay an unspoken agreement. Trust was scarce, and every stranger could be an enemy in disguise. Goku sat apart, silently processing the impressions that pressed in on him from every direction. His body ached from the struggle of awakening, and his mind wrestled with visions that defied simple explanation. In the depth of the night, as a cold wind swept through the narrow refuge, Goku found himself once again alone with his thoughts. The murmuring of the crowd faded into a background hum, and he slipped into a reflective solitude. Shadows played along the walls of his mind, each one a fragment of a past life, a life he might never fully reclaim. Yet, within that darkness, there lay the promise of power and a destiny reimagined. A memory, sharp and unbidden, cut through the haze, the roar of energy, the burst of a ki-fueled assault that shattered the heavens, and a voice that boomed like thunder. In that moment, Goku saw visions of a cosmic scale, a banquet of stars, and the terrible majesty of a force that once dwelled within him. It was as though the universe had imprinted itself upon his very soul, leaving behind the echo of a divine mandate. "Embrace it," the inner voice insisted, its tone a blend of seduction and command. "Let it guide you to what you are meant to be." But as he struggled to reconcile these images with the reality of shattered streets and weary survivors, a different thought surfaced, a simple, stubborn human desire to protect and heal. Goku's eyes narrowed as he considered the delicate balance he must strike. He could not allow himself to be swept away by the tidal pull of overwhelming power. The choice was his, yet the path forward was fraught with peril. A sudden clamor at the shelter's entrance shattered his reverie. Voices, sharp and urgent, echoed from the darkened corridor beyond the makeshift walls. Cole and a few others hurried toward the source, their expressions grim. Goku rose to follow, his body already coiled for action. The internal dialogue receded, replaced by a singular focus on the immediate threat. In the narrow passageway lit by the uncertain glow of the fire, a young man burst in, his face flushed with alarm. "They're coming!" he shouted, eyes wide with terror. "A group of raiders, armed and hungry for chaos. They're sweeping through the block." Cole's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Everyone move! We can't let them catch us here." Goku's pulse quickened as he followed Cole's lead. The group scattered into hidden alcoves, every muscle tensed in anticipation of conflict. The young man's frantic warning mingled with the hushed prayers and hurried whispers of those around him. The city's ruinous silence was broken by the approaching sound of heavy footsteps and the clatter of metal. Outside, the distant rumble of engines and the low growl of crude voices crept closer. Goku pressed his back against a cold, rough wall, eyes flicking to the gap in the rubble where he had once seen freedom. His heart pounded in tandem with the rhythm of the intruder's approach. And in that charged moment, the duality within him flared, a part of him, cold, remorseless, and hungry for the thrill of battle, surged to the forefront, while another part yearned to protect these fragile souls. A muffled conversation reached him from a darkened corridor. Two figures, one with a scar running across his cheek, the other with eyes that shone like embers in the dark, exchanged terse words. "We need to flush them out," the scarred man hissed. "This place will be ours by morning if we drive them into the open," the other figure replied in a low, measured tone. "Patience. They will scatter once the fear sets in. We need only wait." Goku felt the familiar pull of that internal dialogue, a silent battle echoing the external one. "Wait!" a voice inside him countered, soft yet insistent. "Strike swiftly, then fade back into the shadows." But another part of him, one that clung to hope, whispered, Protect those who still believe. The duality surged like conflicting tides in his mind, either willing to yield entirely. As the raiders' voices grew louder, and the first harsh beams of flashlights swept across the debris-strewn street, Goku gripped the rough edge of a fallen pipe. The metal bit into his skin as if to remind him that every decision carried its own price. The inner voice, commanding and inexorable, urged him to act. Now is the moment, it declared. Let your power bloom and show them the force you command. For one long heartbeat, time slowed. Goku's eyes narrowed as he squared his shoulders. The tension in the air, thick with anticipation, coalesced into a single, inevitable choice. He stepped forward into the half-light of the corridor, his body rigid and alert, every sense attuned to the approaching danger. Stay back, he warned in a low tone that brooked no argument, his voice resonating with an authority that belied his inner conflict. The raiders, emerging from the shadows with crude weapons in hand, halted as they spotted him. Their eyes flicked with uncertainty, and for a moment the corridor held its breath. The scarred man sneered. "Who do you think you are?" he spat, his tone mocking yet edged with caution. "A savior or just another ghost wandering in the dark?" Goku's reply was measured. "I am either. I am the consequence of what has been undone." The words carried no melodrama, only a stark truth that reverberated in the tense silence. A flash of movement, a sudden lunge, broke the fragile standoff. Goku reacted instinctively, intercepting the attacker with a precise movement that belied his uncertainty. The impact resounded down the corridor, and the attacker crumpled to the ground, a look of shock etched into his features. The remaining raiders faltered, their confidence waning as the reality of this new force became evident. A chaotic melee erupted. The corridor became a battleground where survival was measured in fleeting moments of instinct and raw power. Goku's senses sharpened to a fine point. Every strike, every parry, was executed with a focus born of necessity. The inner voice, a steady undercurrent in his mind, continued to guide his movements. Harness the fury. Let it flow like a river unrestrained. Yet, even as he fought, a small, insistent part of him clung to restraint, to the memory of compassion that had always defined him. The clash of metal, the grunts of exertion, and the scuffle of feet filled the narrow space until the raiders began to retreat, their disorganized assault crumbling under the weight of unexpected resistance. When the dust finally settled, the corridor was littered with defeated foes and the heavy silence of imminent reprieve. Cole's voice, rough with urgency, broke through the aftermath. "We need to get out of here before more show up." Goku glanced at the scattered forms of his adversaries, his breathing ragged but controlled. The inner dialogue simmered beneath the surface, now less a torrent and more a quiet, persistent murmur. "This is only the beginning," it reminded him, as if to warn him that every victory would come at a cost. His eyes, still ablaze with a mixture of determination and inner conflict, met Cole's steady gaze. "I'm coming," he replied, voice firm despite the lingering tremor in his limbs. Outside, the night had deepened, and the sounds of chaos receded into the distance. The survivors gathered their belongings and prepared to move under Cole's guidance, while Goku lingered for a moment in the now silent corridor. He traced his fingers over the rough surface of the wall, feeling the vibrations of the recent conflict and the echoes of a power that had nearly overwhelmed him. The city around him whispered of secrets, yet to be uncovered, of a destiny that stretched far beyond the confines of this shattered peace. In the quiet that followed the skirmish, Goku allowed himself a moment of introspection. He recalled fleeting images of cosmic battles, of incandescent energy swirling through the void, and a presence that was as enigmatic as it was terrifying. Each memory struck him with the force of a revelation, a reminder that his rebirth was not a mere accident, but a convergence of destinies. His heart pounded as he questioned the nature of the power now surging within him. Was it a gift or a curse? And could he, in the midst of this desolation, harness it without losing himself completely? The night air, cool and unyielding, pressed in on him as he stepped away from the remnants of the corridor. He moved with deliberate steps along a side street, where the neon glow of distant signs offered a flicker of normalcy in an otherwise ravaged world. Each step was a negotiation between his innate humanity and the darker impulses that whispered promises of unfettered might. The inner voice, calm, almost dispassionate, remained at his side. Do not fear your strength. It is your inheritance. Wield it with purpose. A few blocks away, the city's scars were even more apparent. Streets lay fractured by the force of battles past, and abandoned vehicles rusted in silent testament to the chaos. Here, the interplay of light and shadow created a landscape that was as beautiful as it was menacing, a reminder that even in ruin, there could be an art to survival. Goku's eyes, reflecting the interplay of neon and darkness, roamed over the scene with a mixture of analytical detachment and a burgeoning sense of purpose. He stopped before a collapsed archway where a single red banner still fluttered, half torn and clinging stubbornly to its pole. The banner bore cryptic symbols, markings that hinted at ancient power and cosmic lore. Goku's hand reached out, brushing the fabric lightly. In that moment, he felt an electric jolt of memory, a flood of images not his own, of a celestial order and the harsh decree of a god of destruction. The sensation left him both invigorated and unsettled. A low hum of energy thrummed beneath his skin as he turned away from the banner. The presence inside him, that lingering memory of Beerus, seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. It was an insistent reminder that his rebirth was marked by more than the scars of a physical battle. It carried the weight of an ancient legacy, and as he walked, every step seemed to imprint that legacy onto the very ground he trod. His journey carried him through narrow alleyways and across shattered plazas, each location telling its own story of despair and defiance. At times, he paused to listen to the whispers of the wind as it swept through the skeletal remains of buildings, as if the city itself were mourning its lost innocence. In those moments, the internal conversation deepened. You stand at a crossroads, the inner voice intoned softly, its tone neither triumphant nor mournful. The path you choose now will determine the fate of all that remains. And yet another part of him, fragile, human, uttered silently, I must find a way to mend, not to destroy. The conflict within him was a palpable tension, woven into every decision and every movement. It was as if two lives coexisted within a single shell, one that craved the simplicity of heroism and another that reveled in the raw, unyielding power of a cosmic force. This duality, both a burden and a beacon, propelled him forward into the uncertain night. As Goku reached a dilapidated overpass that overlooked a central square, the city's desolation stretched out before him like an open wound. In the distance, he could discern the flickering lights of a makeshift encampment, a temporary sanctuary for those brave enough to endure the collapse of order. The encampment hummed with quiet urgency, the murmurs of survivors, the clatter of improvised defenses, the ever-present tension of those who knew that every moment might bring a new threat. He paused at the edge of the overpass, gazing down at the encampment with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. In that suspended moment, the internal dialogue swelled. Your destiny is not defined by the scars of the past, the voice murmured, but by the choices you make in the fires of trial. Goku's eyes narrowed as he absorbed the weight of those words. Was he to remain a passive observer, or would he step forward and claim the power that churned within him? Before he could decide, a faint sound reached his ears, a measured footstep, deliberate and echoing through the rubble. His instincts flared, and he slipped into the shadows beneath the overpass. The sound drew closer, punctuated by a soft murmur of speech. Goku crouched low, every sense straining to capture details in the dim light. A figure emerged from the darkness, a tall, gaunt individual whose eyes gleamed with quiet calculation. The stranger's movements were smooth and deliberate, as though each step were part of a carefully choreographed dance. He paused at the edge of the encampment, surveying the area with an intensity that belied his calm exterior. For a moment, the stranger's gaze met Goku's from the dark, and in that fleeting second, an unspoken understanding passed between them, a recognition of shared burden, or perhaps the promise of conflict yet to come. The stranger broke the silence with a low, measured voice. You carry a heavy load, even for one reborn. His words, spoken without preamble, cut through the quiet like a knife. Goku's heart pounded. He remained hidden, the inner dialogue urging him to reveal himself, yet caution held him back. Who are you? He finally asked in a hushed tone, barely audible over the distant sounds of the encampment. The stranger's lips curled into a half-smile. Names are for those who cling to a past that no longer exists, he replied enigmatically. But if you must know, I am called Solon. His gaze swept over the encampment, as if measuring its worth. "I've been waiting for someone like you." A surge of adrenaline coursed through Goku's veins as he processed the stranger's words. "Waiting?" he echoed, the word laden with both accusation and intrigue. Salen's eyes, dark and ancient, flickered with an unspoken promise. "Yes. The balance has been disturbed, and the remnants of an old power have been stirred anew. You are not the only one touched by that force." His tone was neither threatening nor welcoming, merely a statement of fact that resonated with the growing uncertainty in Goku's mind. Before Goku could press for more, Salen stepped back into the shadows, his presence dissolving as quietly as it had emerged. The encounter left Goku with more questions than answers, a swirling vortex of uncertainty that mirrored the disarray of the city itself. With a heavy heart and a mind teetering on the brink of revelation, Goku stepped out from his concealment and resumed his journey. The encampment below buzzed with activity, a microcosm of survival amid the chaos. As he approached, the survivors' wary eyes followed him, their expressions a blend of suspicion and cautious hope. Goku knew that every step he took would draw him deeper into the tangled web of fate, a destiny that was as dangerous as it was inevitable. Cole's earlier words echoed in his memory. "Keep your head down until you figure out if you're friend or foe." But Goku understood that in this shattered peace, identities were fluid, and alliances were forged in the crucible of conflict. The night had already revealed its harsh truths, and nothing would ever be the same again. In the quiet moments before dawn, as the encampment prepared to shift once more into the uncertain light of a new day, Goku found a secluded corner to rest. The rhythmic thrum of his heartbeat mingled with the distant murmur of survivors planning their next move, and in that fragile lull, the inner voice returned, gentle yet unyielding. "Your journey is only beginning," it whispered. "The world has changed, and so have you. Embrace what you are, and the path will unfold before you." Goku closed his eyes briefly, the weight of his rebirth settling upon him like a mantle. In his mind, the echoes of ancient battles and cosmic commands interwove with the gritty reality of a city in ruin. The struggle within him was far from over. Indeed, it had only just begun. And as the first pale hints of dawn crept over the horizon, a sense of foreboding and promise mingled in the air, a promise that the coming days would demand every ounce of strength, resolve, and clarity he possessed. In that quiet, suspended moment between night and day, with the shattered piece of a broken world all around him, Goku understood one immutable truth. His rebirth carried a burden as immense as the power that surged within him. The voice of Beerus, once a distant echo, now beat like a drum in the recesses of his soul. Its commands and its temptations would guide him, challenge him, and ultimately shape the destiny of not just himself but all those who remained in this fragile realm of chaos. As the encampment stirred to life and the first rays of morning light penetrated the gloom, Goku rose to face whatever lay ahead. The city, scarred yet resilient, awaited his next move, and in that uncertain light, amid the tension of a world on the brink of transformation, he took his first determined step forward, into a future rife with danger, possibility, and the promise of an ultimate reckoning. The chapter closed on a horizon filled with both the promise of renewal and the ominous threat of further conflict. The survivors prepared for the coming day, and somewhere in the depths of the ruined city, unseen eyes watched with interest. Goku's internal battle had only just begun, and the forces stirring within him promised that the fragile peace would soon shatter again, leaving in its wake a path that none could predict. Even as the new day dawned over a city still echoing with the scars of yesterday's battles, the uncertainty of what lay ahead churned in Goku's mind. The inner voice murmured softly, its cadence now mingling with the first chirps of morning birds and the distant hum of activity in the encampment. "Your destiny awaits, and it is carved in the twilight between creation and destruction." In that charged silence, every survivor sensed that the world was on the cusp of a transformation, one that would force them to confront not only the external threats of raiders and ruin but the internal demons that each carried. The promise of the coming hours, and the danger that lay hidden in every shadow, ensured that the night's brief reprieve would soon dissolve into a struggle for survival. And so, with the weight of ancient memories and the spark of reborn power burning in his eyes, Goku moved forward into the unknown, his path illuminated by both hope and the threat of inevitable conflict. The silence of the new morning was deceptive, hiding the tumult that would soon rise to challenge every step he took. The city, though momentarily still, whispered secrets of what was to come, and as Goku set off once more into the sprawling, scarred expanse of his new world, the remnants of a shattered peace clung to him, a constant reminder that the struggle for balance had only just begun. Goku's footsteps echoed off rain-slicked pavement as he wandered the labyrinth of neon-lit alleyways. The night bled into the early hours, a disjointed lull punctuated by the distant hum of traffic and the fractured glow of battered street lamps. He moved deliberately, each step measured as if retracing the path of a long-forgotten destiny. His mind was a battlefield. Fleeting images, blistering cosmic storms, the cold, detached eyes of a godlike entity, and the unmistakable weight of a forgotten power, pulsed at the edges of his consciousness. They did not belong solely to him. Instead, they whispered a name, Beerus. Every corner turn seemed to trigger a new ripple of memories that were not entirely his own. The sensations, too vivid to be dreams and too unsettling to be mere illusions, suggested something ancient and raw. He paused beneath a flickering streetlight, inhaling the chill night air. Rain began to fall in a steady, persistent drizzle, the droplets shimmering as they caught the light. The rain washed over him, cleansing yet unyielding, much like the memories that haunted him. A narrow doorway beckoned. Beyond it lay an abandoned building rumored among locals to harbor secrets of old. Goku hesitated only a moment before pushing the door open, its groan echoing in the dim corridor. Inside, the building revealed a space frozen in time, cracked plaster, stained walls, and remnants of graffiti that whispered of a rebellious past. In the center of a vast, empty room, a single figure sat cross-legged, eyes closed as if in meditation. The man's presence exuded a quiet authority. Goku's instincts, honed from battles and survival, urged caution, yet an inexplicable familiarity compelled him forward. He cleared his throat. "I'm looking for answers," he said, voice low and even. The man's eyes snapped open, dark and penetrating. They fixed on Goku with measured intensity. "Answers, indeed," he murmured, his voice a blend of calm wisdom and subtle challenge. "But are you ready for what you might find?" Goku's hand drifted unconsciously to the scar on his cheek, a remnant from battles past. "I've been living with questions," he replied. "There are voices in my head. Memories that aren't mine." He paused, gauging the man's reaction. "I need to know who I really am." A slow smile tugged at the corners of the stranger's lips. "Perhaps you've already begun to learn," he said, gesturing for Goku to sit opposite him on a dusty bench. "I am Rio, a keeper of old truths. They say I can see the threads of fate in others. Tell me about these echoes that torment you." Goku sank into the worn bench, his eyes darting around as if searching for hidden traps. "It's as if there's another presence inside me, a relentless voice, ancient and unyielding. I see flashes of a life I never lived. I see destruction, balance, and power beyond anything I've known." Rio nodded slowly, absorbing each word. "There are legends, old and almost forgotten, of souls intertwined with divine energies," he began. "Sometimes, when a spirit is reborn, it carries with it the residue of a past that defies the mortal coil. Tell me, do you feel the pull toward chaos?" A shiver ran down Goku's spine, though it was unclear whether it came from the rain or the weight of the conversation. "I feel it," he admitted. "It's like a storm at the edge of my thoughts. I want to use it for good, but sometimes I wonder if it wants to tear me apart." Rio leaned forward, his gaze unyielding. "Power is neither inherently good nor evil, Goku. It is the wielder's heart that dictates its course. But be warned, embracing such power without understanding its origins can lead to ruin." For a long moment, silence reigned between them, filled only by the soft tapping of rain on broken windows. Goku's eyes narrowed as he recalled a flash, a memory of a vast cosmic arena, the scent of burning stars, and a voice that resonated with authority. "I remember a battle," he said at last, his tone measured. "I remember an adversary whose every word carried the weight of destiny. I saw his eyes, dark and unblinking, and felt as though I were caught in a whirlwind of ancient prophecy." Rio's expression grew somber. "That, my friend, is the echo of Beerus," he stated quietly. "Not merely a memory, but a fragment of a god's essence. When Beerus once ruled over the balance of creation and destruction, His spirit bore witness to the eternal cycle of existence. It appears that his power now stirs within you. Goku's breath hitched. How can that be? He demanded softly, anger and fear intermingling in his tone. I'm not him. I'm me. Identity is a delicate tapestry. Ryo replied, his voice steady but filled with an ancient sorrow. In your rebirth, the strands of destiny have woven together a new pattern. You carry within you both the flame of compassion and the chill of annihilation. The memories you experience are echoes, fragments of a divine existence that once loomed over the cosmos. They are not meant to define you, but to remind you of the potential you hold. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming on the corrugated metal roof as if urging the truth to be spoken. Goku's fists clenched. I won't let that power control me, he said, determination mingling with uncertainty. I need to understand it, so I can choose my own path. Ryo regarded him with quiet intensity. Understanding comes only through acceptance, and acceptance through struggle. You must confront these echoes head-on, peel back the layers of memory, and decide which parts you will keep and which you will let fade. Only then can you harness the strength within. Goku's gaze fell to his hands, feeling the subtle hum of energy pulsing beneath his skin, a reminder of the dual force he bore. What if I lose myself in the process? He asked softly. Ryo's reply was measured and firm. Then you will have discovered the truth about who you are, a being of infinite complexity, forged by both light and shadow. Remember, the divine does not seek to eradicate the mortal spirit, it challenges it. Every battle you face, every fragment of memory you unearth, is a step toward embracing that duality. The conversation lingered like the aftertaste of a bitter medicine. Goku's mind whirled with images of cosmic battles and ethereal landscapes. He recalled a memory more vivid than the others, a colossal, stone-racked temple suspended in the void of space. In that temple, a colossal figure, lithe yet imposing, had spoken with a voice that commanded silence. Embrace the storm within, and you shall shape the destiny of worlds, the memory whispered. The command resonated in his soul, an echo of an ancient decree. A sudden crash of thunder punctuated the night, and the building shuddered as if in sympathy. Ryo's eyes flicked upward, then back to Goku. There is a reckoning in the air, he murmured. Not merely the fury of the elements, but a harbinger of what is to come. Goku sat up straighter. What do you mean? He pressed, his voice low and tense. Ryo's tone grew grave. For every spark of divine power, there is an equal measure of consequence. The organization that lurks in the shadows has taken notice of your awakening. They have long coveted the kind of power that you now harbor, a power that echoes the might of gods. They will come for you, Goku, and when they do, the balance you seek will be tested. The gravity of Ryo's words settled over Goku like a shroud. He swallowed hard, the taste of impending conflict bitter on his tongue. I've encountered trouble before, he replied, though the uncertainty in his eyes betrayed his calm facade. But I can't run from this. I have to learn, or else I'll never control it. Ryo nodded slowly. Learning is a path paved with sacrifice. But know this, every step you take toward understanding the divine within you will also bring you closer to the precipice. The organization, whose operatives are already stirring in the underbelly of this city, will see you as a key to unlocking that power for their own ends. A long pause fell between them, heavy with unspoken fears. The only sound was the relentless patter of rain and the distant murmur of urban life. Goku's eyes shifted to a shattered mirror hanging on the wall, a mosaic of reflections distorting his face. For a moment, he caught a glimpse of someone else in the glass, eyes that burned with a feral intensity, lips curled into a knowing smirk. Then, just as quickly, the reflection vanished, leaving only his own troubled gaze behind. Is that me? He whispered, voice barely audible. Ryo's smile was enigmatic. It is you, and it is also the echo of a power that once reigned supreme. The duality of your soul is not a curse, it is the very essence of your strength. But to master it, you must confront every aspect of who you are, even those that scare you. Goku's mind raced with fragmented memories. He recalled a time of unsullied clarity, a world of blazing light and stark contrasts. He saw himself, not as the man he was now, but as a being imbued with cosmic energy, a beacon in the void. That memory, however, was intertwined with darker visions, cities in ruins, celestial fires consuming ancient relics, and the indifferent gaze of a deity whose power could level mountains. The interplay of creation and destruction, hope and despair, coiled within him like a serpent ready to strike. "You speak of sacrifice," Goku said, voice trembling with a mix of determination and dread. "But what if the cost is more than I can bear?" Ryo's eyes softened with an understanding born of years spent in the shadows of fate. "Then you must decide if the risk is worth the reward," he replied. "There is no easy path when destiny is written in the stars. Your power, this divine echo, could be the key to saving countless lives, or it could lead to devastation if left unchecked." The room grew colder, and Goku shivered despite the rain's warmth seeping through the broken walls. He wrapped his arms around himself, feeling the subtle pulse of energy that seemed to resonate in time with his heartbeat. "I can't help but wonder if I'm already too far gone," he murmured, almost to himself. Ryo's voice was gentle yet unyielding. "You are not lost until you cease to fight for what you believe in. The path ahead is treacherous, and the echoes of Beerus will test your resolve at every turn. But within that trial lies the opportunity to forge a new destiny, one where you command your power, rather than being consumed by it." Outside, a car's headlights swept across the building's broken facade, casting long, eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Goku's eyes followed the shifting patterns as if searching for a sign. "And what of this organization you mentioned?" he asked, his tone edged with suspicion. "Who are they? And why would they be interested in me?" Ryo's expression darkened. "They are remnants of a collective force that once sought to harness divine energies for their own ambitions. Over time, they evolved into a clandestine organization, hidden in plain sight, whose members have infiltrated every level of society. They seek power above all else, and when they learned of your awakening, they began to mobilize. They believe that by controlling the divine echoes within you, they can shape the world in their image." Goku's jaw tightened. "I won't let them. I've faced down danger before. I won't let some shadowy cabal dictate my fate." "Bravery is not the absence of fear, Goku," Ryo said quietly. "It is the resolve to act despite it. But you must be cautious. Every decision, every confrontation, will draw you closer to the edge. The echoes of the divine within you are a double-edged sword capable of incredible feats, but also of great destruction if misused." A long moment of silence stretched between them as the rain battered the roof. Goku's mind churned with images and emotions, a storm of memories that refused to settle. He closed his eyes, summoning the fragments of his past, trying to piece them together like shards of broken glass. In one vision, he saw himself standing atop a crumbling temple, the wind howling around him, as the eyes of a long-dead deity burned with unspoken secrets. In another, he experienced the raw fury of battle, a chaotic, visceral dance of light and shadow that left him trembling long after the conflict ended. When he opened his eyes again, the room felt charged, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. "I need to know more," Goku said, his voice resolute yet laced with uncertainty. "If I'm to control this power, I have to understand where it comes from, every echo, every memory. How do I tame a storm that feels so ancient?" Ryo rose from his seated position, moving with a deliberate grace that belied his age. He walked to a rickety bookshelf and pulled out a battered, leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed, the script etched in a language that merged myth and prophecy. "This journal," Ryo explained, "has been passed down through generations of those who walk the line between mortal frailty and divine might. It contains records of the old battles, of gods and men, and of the cost that comes with wielding such power. Read it, and you might find clues to tame the storm within you." Goku reached for the journal with a mixture of reverence and trepidation. His fingers brushed the cracked leather, and in that moment, he felt the weight of centuries pressing upon him. "And if I don't like what I find?" he asked softly. Ryo's gaze was unyielding. "Then you must face it head-on, even if it shatters the illusions you've held dear. Truth is rarely gentle. It is relentless, and it demands that you confront both your strengths and your flaws." He paused, letting his words sink in. "The echoes of Beerus are not a gift nor a curse. They are a reminder that power, divine or mortal, carries consequences. The path to mastery is paved with the willingness to endure that cost. Goku's grip tightened around the journal as he sank back onto the bench. Outside, the storm intensified, each raindrop a staccato beat of nature's own conflict. The conversation weighed on him, a delicate balance of hope and dread. "I'll read it," he said firmly. "I'll learn what I need to know. But tell me, Ryo, how did you come by this wisdom?" Ryo's eyes flickered with a hint of nostalgia. "I, too, once carried the burden of divine echoes. My journey began long ago, in a time when the line between gods and men was as clear as day. I witnessed the rise and fall of empires, and I saw the devastating beauty of unchecked power. My own soul was fractured by the very forces you now feel stirring within you. It took years of solitude and sacrifice to learn that control comes not from denying the storm, but by learning to ride its winds." A tremor passed through Goku as he absorbed Ryo's story, a tale that resonated with his own inner struggle. He looked away, his gaze fixed on a darkened corner of the room where shadows whispered secrets. "I want to believe I can master it," he said, more to himself than to Ryo. "But every time I try to push it away, it comes back stronger. It's like fighting a current that refuses to be dammed." Ryo moved closer, placing a steady hand on Goku's shoulder. "You already have the strength within you, Goku. Every moment of conflict, every surge of power is a lesson. The key is not to fear the storm, but to embrace it as part of who you are. You are both the calm and the tempest. Only by accepting that duality can you hope to shape your destiny." For a long, charged moment, the two men sat in silence, the rhythm of the rain echoing the cadence of their shared understanding. Goku's mind flickered with unresolved images, a kaleidoscope of cosmic battles and personal sacrifice. The journal's worn pages beckoned him with the promise of hidden truths, and yet the uncertainties of his path loomed large. Finally, Goku spoke, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'll do it," he declared. "I'll read this journal and face whatever it tells me. I won't let fear or doubt hold me back. I need to reclaim my own destiny, even if it means walking through the flames." Ryo's smile was a quiet affirmation, tempered by the gravity of his own memories. "Then prepare yourself, Goku. The journey ahead will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. The echoes of Beerus will grow louder, and the organization that hunts you will stop at nothing to seize your power. Your next steps may lead you into darkness, but within that darkness lies the possibility of rebirth." As the night deepened, the storm outside seemed to mirror the tumult within Goku's soul. Every flash of lightning illuminated the truth of his dual nature, a convergence of light and shadow that defined his very existence. The journal, heavy with secrets, lay open on his lap as he began to read. The ancient script, though faded, pulsed with a life of its own, each word a stepping stone toward an uncertain future. Goku's eyes moved steadily over the pages, absorbing stories of cosmic battles and divine interventions, of heroes who balanced on the knife's edge between creation and destruction. He encountered passages that recounted the fury of gods and the silent despair of men, each narrative a mirror reflecting his internal conflict. One excerpt in particular caught his attention. "Within the heart of every mortal lies the seed of the divine, a spark that, if nurtured, can ignite the heavens. Yet, to awaken this spark is to invite the tempest of the past. Only those who embrace both the fire and the void may command the power to shape worlds." Goku's breath caught as he recognized the parallel to his own struggle. The words were neither comforting nor condemning. They simply stated a truth that resonated deep within him. He traced a finger along the faded ink, feeling the texture of time and sacrifice beneath his touch. A sudden gust of wind rattled the broken window, scattering loose papers across the floor. Goku glanced up, his senses pricked by the sound. In the doorway, a shadow lingered, a figure whose presence had gone unnoticed until now. Ryo's eyes narrowed, and Goku's heart pounded. The intruder stepped forward slowly, his features obscured by the gloom. "Who's there?" Ryo demanded, his voice low and alert. The figure hesitated, then spoke with a quiet, even cadence. "I mean no harm. I, too, have come seeking answers." His tone was neither pleading nor threatening, but held a practiced neutrality that belied hidden intentions. Goku rose to his feet, instinctively moving to block the newcomer's path. "State your name," he said sharply, every muscle coiled in readiness. The stranger offered a slight bow. I am Kaido. I have followed your journey for some time, Goku. Your struggle, your inner battle, resonates with me. I believe our fates are intertwined. Ryo's gaze sharpened, and he regarded Kaido with quiet suspicion. Intertwined, you say? And what truth do you seek in these dark corridors? He asked, his words deliberate. Kaito's eyes flickered between Ryo and Goku, as if weighing his next words with care. I seek understanding of the divine echoes that reside in you, Goku. I have seen them manifest in dreams and visions. I believe that together, we can unlock a truth that has been hidden for centuries, a truth that may change the very nature of our existence. Goku felt a chill that wasn't entirely due to the cold air. Why should I trust you? He asked, his voice edged with caution. Kaido's smile was slight, enigmatic. Trust is earned, not given freely. But I carry with me knowledge of the old ways, secrets that I believe can help you control the power that is both your gift and your burden. I ask only that you hear me out. Ryo studied Kaido's expression, noting the sincerity mingled with an unspoken urgency. We stand at a crossroads, Goku, he said slowly. Every choice we make from this moment may lead to salvation or ruin. If you are to walk the path of the divine, you must consider every ally and every adversary with equal scrutiny. Kaito inclined his head. I do not come to force you into anything. Instead, I offer an alternative perspective, a different piece of the puzzle. The journal you now read is one fragment of a larger tapestry. My own records speak of the origins of the divine echoes, and they may fill in the gaps that remain. His tone was calm but insistent, as though the fate of countless souls rested on his words. Goku's eyes narrowed as he weighed the implications. The storm of conflicting voices in his head grew louder, a cacophony of past and present. I need to control this power, he said firmly, not be controlled by it. If your records can help me do that, then maybe there's a reason I met you tonight. Ryo broke the silence with a measured nod. Very well, he said. For now, we will allow Kaido to remain. But remember, Goku, every alliance comes with its own price. And the darkness that follows you is ever hungry for the slightest misstep. Kaido's gaze met Ryo's, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them, one born of shared secrets and mutual caution. We must act swiftly, Kaido said. The organization that seeks you is already mobilizing its agents. The night will not be kind to those who linger in indecision. Goku closed the journal and looked between his two potential guides. His internal storm raged, a maelstrom of memories, fear, and a burning determination to seize control of his fate. Then we move forward, he declared, voice resolute despite the tremor of uncertainty. I'll continue reading. I'll learn. And I'll face whatever comes next. As the trio gathered in the silent, rain-soaked room, the tension mounted like the swell of an approaching tempest. Outside, the city pulsed with a dangerous energy, and somewhere in the depths of its underbelly, forces stirred, forces that would soon converge upon Goku and test the limits of his newly awakened divine echo. Ryo's voice, soft but insistent, carried over the sound of the storm. The night is not yet done, and our journey has only just begun. In the pages of that journal and in the echoes of your soul, you will find both the guidance you seek and the key to the next trial. Prepare yourself, Goku. The true battle lies ahead. Goku's eyes hardened as he met Ryo's gaze, the determination of a man on the cusp of transformation burning bright. I'm ready, he said quietly, the words carrying the weight of a promise, to himself and to the cosmic legacy that now resided within him. In that moment, beneath the relentless rain and the watchful eyes of strangers, Goku embraced the complexity of his destiny. The echoes of the divine resonated not as distant memories, but as a living, pulsing force within him, a force that would shape the very fabric of the future. And as the storm outside raged on, so too did the storm within, heralding the coming dawn of a new era, a dawn where every choice, every sacrifice, and every heartbeat would forge the path towards salvation or oblivion. The city sprawled beneath a pall of perpetual twilight, its neon signs sputtering against a sky thick with industrial smog. Rain fell in measured intervals, a relentless drizzle that glossed the cracked asphalt and illuminated the alleys in fractured bursts of color. In this urban maze of decay and desperation, Goku navigated the streets with a quiet intensity, his footsteps echoing off the concrete like measured beats in a silent, troubled drum. Every step resonated with the weight of his newfound awareness. The remnants of cosmic power stirred within him, an undercurrent pulsing alongside his racing heart. Memories of another life, half forgotten yet insistent, whispered of ancient battles and divine fury. They were the echoes of Beerus, merging with his own nature to create a dissonant symphony inside him. In that moment, Goku understood that this world demanded more than brute strength. It required cunning, resolve, and a willingness to confront the darkness head-on. Under a flickering street lamp, he paused to survey the deserted sidewalk. The urban landscape appeared both alien and familiar, a tapestry of human suffering interwoven with the resilience of those who fought to survive. Distant sounds of life, the rumble of traffic, murmurs from shadowed doorways, provided a grim counterpoint to the silent intensity of his inner conflict. A sudden clatter shattered his reverie. Two figures emerged from a narrow alley, a duo clad in battered leather jackets, their eyes glinting with mischief and menace. One stepped forward with a sneer. "Hey, tough guy!" The man spat, his voice gravelly. "You lost, or are you just looking for trouble?" Goku's reply was measured, his tone calm but unwavering. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just trying to understand where I belong," the man scoffed, and his companion chuckled darkly. "Belong? In a city that chews people up and spits them out? You must be daft." Tension coiled in the humid air. Goku's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. His stance revealed a restraint honed by a struggle deeper than the immediate threat. Before the pair could advance further, a low rumble vibrated through the night. The streetlight overhead shuddered, casting erratic shadows on the rain-soaked pavement. In that fraction of time, the confrontation erupted into chaos. The first thug lunged, swinging a clumsy fist in a wide arc. Goku sidestepped with the fluidity of a practiced dancer, his counterstrike meeting flesh and bone with surgical precision. The fight unfolded with brutal clarity, a measured series of parries, counters, and controlled strikes. Between the raw impact of blows and the splintering of concrete, the air filled with a sparse dialogue punctuated by snarls and gasps. "What's your deal, man?" one attacker snarled as he staggered from a near miss, sweat and adrenaline mingling on his brow. "You got some kind of glow about you." Goku's voice was barely above a murmur as he replied. "I'm trying to find my place. I don't want to hurt you." Yet even as his words softened the confrontation, his body responded with a swift demonstration of skill and power. A well-placed strike left the thug sprawling, and the rain mingled with spilled blood on the pavement. Before the scene could settle, a third figure emerged from the shadows, a silent observer in a long, dark coat and a tilted hat. He inclined his head slowly, acknowledging the spectacle with a barely perceptible smile. His eyes, cold and calculating, never left Goku's face. In that fleeting exchange, challenge and curiosity passed wordlessly between them, a promise that this encounter was only the opening move in a larger, dangerous game. As the downed thug groaned on the pavement, Goku knelt beside him and said softly, "I don't want to hurt you." The injured man's rasping reply betrayed equal parts confusion and grudging respect. You're not like us." "Who are you?" Offering a half-smile that barely lifted the sorrow in his eyes, Goku answered. "Someone who doesn't belong here either." The pair of thugs exchanged wary glances before limping back into the labyrinth of city streets, leaving behind a silence heavy with questions. The observer lingered just long enough to watch the departing figures, then melted back into the urban gloom. His departure was as enigmatic as his presence, leaving Goku with a lingering sense of foreboding. Night deepened. With each step away from the brawl, Goku's thoughts churned with questions. Who was that man? What did his silent watchfulness mean? And most pressing of all, how could he reconcile the divine memories that simmered within him with the harsh, unforgiving realities of the human world? At dawn's early gray, Goku found himself drawn to the city's underbelly, a district infamous for its underground fight rings. Here, where brutality met spectacle, survival depended on the ability to both strike and think fast. The district was a realm where the strong carved their dominion from the chaos, and where every fight was a lesson in the balance between chaos and control. He entered a dilapidated building whose exterior bore the scars of time, graffiti, and peeling posters testified to a long history of defiance. Inside, narrow corridors and echoing chambers led him to the heart of an underground arena. Harsh, flickering lights illuminated a crude ring bounded by tattered ropes. Around it, a throng of spectators buzzed with raw anticipation. Their faces, etched by hardship, watched every motion as if the fight itself could rewrite their destinies. Goku's presence stirred murmurs among the onlookers. A grizzled man with a jagged scar across his cheek, leaning against a concrete pillar, fixed him with a piercing gaze. "You got spirit, kid," the man said, voice rough as gravel. "But this ain't a place for dreamers." Goku's steady eyes met the man's. "Maybe not," he replied simply. "But it's a place where I can learn." The comment drew a low, approving hum from nearby fighters, and the scarred man grunted. "Just be careful. This city chews up folks who don't know their limits." Inside the ring, two fighters circled each other like predators assessing their prey. Their movements were a blend of brutal force and cautious calculation. Between rapid strikes and desperate evasions, terse words punctuated the air. "Strike hard, but think," one fighter hissed as he ducked a furious uppercut. His adversary scoffed, launching a reckless barrage of blows in response. The contest was more than a test of brawn. It was a silent conversation of wills. Goku absorbed every nuance, cataloging each dodge, every measured counter. The fight was an education in the dance of violence, where each movement carried both the weight of survival and the promise of revelation. His attention, however, was intermittently drawn to a darkened corner of the arena. There, partially concealed in the flickering gloom, stood the silent observer from the previous night. His eyes, deep and unblinking, followed every movement with unnerving precision. The observer's presence thickened the tension in the room. Whispers died down, even the fighters seemed to hesitate as if aware of an invisible, all-seeing force. In that moment, Goku felt the stirrings of the cosmic conflict within him, a resonance of the divine that warred with the confines of his humanity. After the fight concluded in a mix of exhausted triumph and bitter defeat, Goku lingered at the edge of the arena. He watched as the crowd slowly dispersed into the night, their murmurs blending with the city's ambient hum. A wiry, alert man sidled up beside him, a local fighter with a history of loss etched into his eyes. "You gotta look about you," the man observed in a low, measured tone. "Like you're carrying a storm inside." Goku's eyes flickered with the weight of his inner turmoil. "Maybe I am," he admitted softly. "Or maybe I'm just trying to find where I fit in." The man, whose name turned out to be Ryu, nodded thoughtfully. "This place, it'll break you if you're not careful. The world here takes no prisoners." His voice softened for a moment, hinting at empathy beneath the hardened exterior. "But you're different." Their brief conversation lingered in the charged silence as the arena's lights dimmed and the night reclaimed its hold. Goku's thoughts raced, intermingling with the distant echoes of the brawl and the enigmatic gaze of the observer. He sensed that the city's undercurrent of violence and survival hid even darker currents, threads of a larger, unseen network that manipulated events from behind a veil of secrecy. Later that night, as Goku meandered through rain-soaked back alleys, he came upon a small group of urban outcasts. Huddled near a flickering neon sign, they whispered among themselves, wary eyes scanning the shadows. Their leader, a lean woman with a gaze sharp as shattered glass, stepped forward. "You're not from around here, are you?" she challenged, her tone both brusque and curious. Goku regarded her with calm determination. "I'm not," he said simply. "I'm searching for answers." A ripple of murmurs passed through the group. The woman, Mara, extended a hand in a gesture that balanced invitation with warning. "I run things around these parts. If you're serious about finding answers, you might consider joining us. At least until you figure out what you're up against." Goku's inner conflict played out in the brief hesitation that followed. "I don't need to join anyone, but I won't walk alone either," he replied evenly. "Maybe we can help each other." Mara's lips curved into a slight, enigmatic smile. "Trust here is earned, not given freely. We'll see if you're worth it." Before more could be said, a commotion erupted at the far end of the alley, a clash of voices and hurried footsteps. Mara's eyes darted toward the disturbance. "Trouble's never far behind," she remarked with thin irony. From a side street emerged a group of well-dressed men, their posture refined but eyes hard and unyielding. One, with slicked back hair and an expression that brooked no nonsense, stepped forward. "Good evening," he intoned coolly. "We're here on business. I suggest you step aside." Mara's hand slid toward a concealed blade, and Goku tensed as the threat materialized. The well-dressed man's tone shifted imperiously. "I wouldn't advise defiance," he said, voice imbued with quiet menace. "Consider your options." For a long, suspended moment, the alley held its breath. Then, with swift, coordinated motions, the well-dressed men advanced. In an instant, chaos broke out again. Goku moved through the melee with preternatural grace, each punch and parry delivered with precise, deliberate force. His strikes, fueled by the echo of divine memory, were measured yet devastating, turning the attacker's calculated menace into disarray. Amid the flurry of combat, words cut through the clamor. "You're in over your head," the well-dressed leader hissed as he exchanged blows with Goku. "You don't know what you're meddling with." Goku's reply, clipped and resolute, rang out as he countered. "Maybe not, but I won't back down." The battle's fevered pace and raw brutality revealed the underlying truth. This was not merely a physical skirmish, but a collision of ideologies, a declaration that in this city, strength meant more than power alone. It was about standing up against those who sought to dominate from the shadows. When the well-dressed men finally withdrew, retreating with parting words that promised, "This isn't over. We'll be watching," Goku surveyed the aftermath. Broken glass and scattered belongings bore silent testimony to the fight's ferocity. His eyes found Mara's, now mingling caution with reluctant admiration. "This wasn't random," she observed quietly. "There's a method to their madness, a plan that runs deeper than mere street control." Goku's response was heavy with resolve. "I can feel it, a network manipulating everything. I don't know its full reach, but I intend to find out." As they departed the alley, Goku caught sight of that enigmatic observer one final time. Their eyes locked, a silent challenge, a wordless promise that he was marked, a piece in a puzzle far larger than he'd ever imagined. Goku's voice, low but firm, cut through the tension. "I know you're watching. I'm not your pawn." The observer inclined his head slightly, replying in a tone both warning and intriguing. "Not a pawn, a piece yet to be moved." And then he vanished into the darkness, leaving more questions than answers. Later, in a rundown motel room lit by the hum of fluorescent bulbs, Goku allowed himself a rare moment of solitude. As he tended to fresh cuts and bruises, he sat by a grimy window watching the city awaken. The horizon glowed with the first hints of dawn, and his thoughts churned between the remnants of celestial memories and the grim realities of this human battleground. He recalled the observer's cryptic words, "Perhaps a piece yet to be moved," and wondered if he truly was but a cog in an intricate, malevolent machine. Yet amid the pain and uncertainty, a quiet determination took root. Each injury, each battle, was a stepping stone toward unraveling the tangled conspiracy that gripped the city. On a battered desk, he spread out a small, well-worn notebook. He scribbled notes with deliberate strokes, a habit formed in his search for clarity. Every line captured fragments of the night, the confrontation in the alley, the underground brawls, the whispered warnings from Ryu and Mara. With every word, he mapped out a strategy for his next steps. The notebook became a mosaic of observations, a blueprint against the unseen enemy that lurked behind every shadowed corner. Stepping back out into the rain-washed streets, Goku moved with a measured confidence. The urban sprawl, a living tapestry of broken dreams and relentless struggle, greeted him with a chaotic mix of light and dark. Vendors hawked their wares on crowded sidewalks. Distant sirens wailed in the background. Every face bore the silent testimony of survival, a mirror of his own internal battle. An elderly man sitting on a stoop nodded at him as if acknowledging a shared struggle. "This city never forgives," the old man murmured. "But it never forgets either. Every scar has a story." Goku paused to consider those words. In that brief exchange, he saw himself reflected in the city's weathered soul, a constant fight for redemption amid decay. The urban landscape unfolded district by district, a grim mosaic of shattered hopes and fierce resilience. Goku traversed streets where shadows clung to crumbling brick, where neon advertisements flickered like desperate signals. Each sound and movement sharpened his senses. Every whispered conversation, every hurried step, resonated with the promise of danger and opportunity. The city was alive, pulsating with the heartbeat of its inhabitants, and Goku felt the inexorable pull of its mysteries. Before long, he found himself drawn once more to the backrooms of rundown bars and abandoned warehouses, the places where secrets traded hands like contraband. In one such establishment, beneath a single, swinging bulb, a circle of figures huddled in furtive discussion. Their conversation, hushed and laden with caution, halted abruptly as Goku approached. A grizzled man, one eye covered by a ragged patch, fixed Goku with a piercing look. "You new around here?" the man rasped. Goku nodded. "I'm looking for answers." The man's gaze sharpened. "Answers can be dangerous in a city like this. Who are you, really? And what do you want with the truth?" Goku's reply was quiet yet resolute. "I'm just trying to find my place in a broken world. Maybe the truth can help fix it." The man snorted. "Noble, but noble leads to ruin. Be careful, kid." With that, he turned away, leaving Goku to digest the warning. Each encounter, whether a casual nod from a weary street vendor or the intense scrutiny of a shadowy informant, wove itself into the tapestry of Goku's mission. The city's secrets were countless, its undercurrents dark and deliberate. Soon, his path led him to a safe house run by Mara, tucked away in a converted warehouse on the city's fringes. Inside, amid maps, documents, and scattered trinkets of clandestine investigations, Mara studied him with measured interest. "I need to know more about that organization you mentioned," Goku said once they were alone at a rickety table. His voice was low and even, bridging the gulf between his cosmic memories and the mortal threat before him. Mara leaned forward, her tone conspiratorial. "They call themselves the Syndicate. They use fear and manipulation to keep the city under their thumb. Their influence creeps into every aspect of life, from underground fight rings to corporate boardrooms. They operate in silence, pulling strings from the shadows. And they're watching you." Goku frowned. "Why me?" Her eyes softened briefly before hardening again. "Because you're not like the others. You carry power within you, a liability if you're not careful. They fear what you might become if left unchecked." A chill rippled through Goku's spine. The city, already a realm of broken dreams, now harbored a threat that reached into the very essence of power. Outside, the urban clamor continued, sirens wailed, engines roared, and street vendors shouted. But inside, time seemed to slow as Mara lowered her voice. "There's more. Rumors say that the Syndicate isn't satisfied with mere control. They're planning something massive, something that could tip the scales of power permanently. You'll have to decide. Will you stand aside and let them dictate this city's fate, or will you risk everything to stop them?" Goku's mind churned with conflicting impulses. The lure of his divine heritage beckoned him toward unimaginable power, while the weight of mortal responsibility pressed down like an anchor. "I don't have all the answers," he said finally, "but I can't stand by and do nothing. Too much is at stake." Mara's gaze searched his face. "The road ahead is treacherous. The choices you make now will echo through every street and alley of this city, and maybe beyond." As the hours slipped by, the early light filtered through cracked windows, and Goku departed Mara's safe house with a dossier clutched under his arm, a collection of intelligence, maps, and encrypted messages detailing the Syndicate's operations. Every step back onto rain-drenched streets carried the weight of newfound determination. The city's pulse, a relentless mixture of hope and despair, beat on as if in defiance of the darkness that sought to claim it. Winding through narrow alleys, Goku's mind replayed the events of the past night. The violent brawls, the cryptic warnings, the mysterious observer's parting words. Each memory fused with his cosmic recollections, forging a new sense of purpose. He resolved to infiltrate the underbelly of this urban labyrinth and expose the nefarious network manipulating its citizens. The data in the dossier was his first tangible clue, a thread he intended to follow until the full tapestry of conspiracy revealed itself. Later that evening, as dusk deepened into night, Goku found himself in a modest apartment he had secured on the city's outskirts, a transient refuge among others who lived on the fringes. The room was sparse, a rickety bed, a battered desk, and a small window through which he could watch the city's neon glow. Here, the quiet allowed his thoughts to take shape. He opened his notebook and began to scribble down everything he'd seen and heard, the names, the warnings, the coded messages. Every word was a step toward clarity, a promise that the chaos of the night would someday yield its secrets. Outside, the city slumbered uneasily, its streets filled with both whispered dreams and unspoken dread. Goku reflected on a conversation with an elderly man he met earlier, a man who had said, "Every scar tells a story." In that moment, Goku recognized that he, too, was accumulating scars, each a testament to the battles fought in the pursuit of truth. He vowed that no matter how deep the darkness grew, he would remain the light that cut through it. The next day, driven by a need to act, Goku set out again. The dossier weighed heavily in his bag as he retraced his steps to a busy intersection. There, a heated argument erupted among a group of young men. One shouted, "We can't keep letting them push us around. They think we're nothing but rats." Another retorted bitterly, "Rats or not, they're the ones pulling the strings." Goku stopped to listen, feeling an unexpected kinship with their voices of defiance. Their struggle was a mirror of his internal battle, between yielding to overwhelming power and fighting to claim a future. The city itself was a living organism, a pulsating mass of decaying buildings, flickering streetlights, and unyielding determination. Every corner held secrets, every shadow whispered danger. As he moved, Goku began frequenting the hidden enclaves where information flowed like illicit currency. In a dim backroom of a rundown bar, he met a man with a patch over one eye who eyed him warily. "You're new around here, aren't you?" the man rasped, looking for answers. Goku replied softly. The man's eyes narrowed. "Answers here come at a steep price. Just be sure you can pay." With that, he turned away, leaving Goku to ponder the cost of truth. Days bled into nights as Goku's investigation deepened. He tracked whispered rumors of an organization known as the Syndicate, a cabal that controlled everything from underground fight rings to corporate boardrooms. In hushed conversations in seedy cafes and abandoned warehouses, he learned that the group moved in silence, their influence reaching into every dark corner of the city. Each new piece of intelligence painted a clearer, more disturbing picture of an enemy whose ambition was as boundless as it was ruthless. At length, Goku returned to Mara's safe house. In the cluttered interior of the converted warehouse, Mara and a small band of like-minded fighters pored over maps and reports. "They're planning something big," Mara explained in a hushed tone, tapping a smudged section of a map. "If we don't act soon, they'll seize control of the city's power grid and plunge everyone into darkness." Her eyes, fierce and determined, met Goku's. "I need someone who can get inside their network, someone who isn't afraid to use their abilities." Goku's gaze hardened. "I'll do it," he declared, voice steady despite the tumult within. "I need to see their operations up close, to learn how far their reach goes." The weight of his decision pressed on him, but so did the knowledge that the city's fate might depend on his actions. That night, as the city bristled with latent unrest, Goku received a terse message on his phone. "Meet me at the old train yard. Midnight. Come alone." The note bore no signature, only a stylized sigil that resonated with an eerie familiarity. The train yard, a decaying relic overgrown with weeds, had long been a haven for those who operated in the urban shadows. With little hesitation, Goku gathered his belongings and slipped into the night, the envelope of mystery clutched tightly in his hand. The journey to the train yard plunged him deeper into the forgotten quarters of the city. Abandoned tracks, rusting locomotives, and shattered dreams formed the desolate landscape, where every step echoed with the weight of lost time. Amid the silence, he spotted a lone figure leaning against a cold freight car. The figure's face lay hidden in darkness. "You got the message?" a low, gravelly voice asked. Goku nodded. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure chuckled softly. "A friend. Or maybe someone who knows the truth you seek." Their conversation unfolded in clipped, coded phrases, a brief exchange that revealed hints of the Syndicate's plan to consolidate power in a way that would upend the city's very structure. Before vanishing into the gloom, the contact pressed a small data chip into Goku's hand. "This is just the beginning," the stranger warned. "They have far more planned than you can imagine." Returning to the city's pulse, Goku felt a renewed urgency. The chip was a tangible clue, a spark of hope that might illuminate the dark corners of this vast conspiracy. Over the following weeks, his days blurred into nights filled with stealthy investigations. He moved like a ghost through derelict factories and hidden corridors, extracting fragments of information from unwilling informants and abandoned computer terminals alike. Each discovery deepened the enigma. Encrypted files detailing a countdown to a catastrophic event, schematics of secret facilities, and cryptic references to an imminent takeover of the city's power grid. One chilly evening, as Goku huddled over his laptop in a cramped, dim room, the data chip began to reveal its secrets. Streams of code and schematic diagrams unfurled on the screen, a map of the enemy's network and a timetable for their next move. His pulse quickened as he deciphered the encrypted messages. The syndicate planned to seize control of the central power station by midnight tomorrow, a move that would shroud the city in darkness and terrorize its citizens. Every second mattered, and every moment of hesitation might spell disaster. Just then, his phone vibrated with an urgent message from Ryu. "Meet me at the pier. Urgent." The pier, a desolate stretch of concrete and rusting equipment by the sea, had long served as a gathering point for those operating on the fringes. Under a moonlit sky, with the restless ocean murmuring secrets to the shore, Ryu waited beneath a solitary lamp post. His face, etched with worry, was illuminated in the flickering light. "I've been following the trail," Ryu said in a hushed tone as soon as Goku arrived. "The syndicate is mobilizing. They're planning something that could destabilize the entire city. And I think they're targeting you." "Targeting me?" Goku repeated, disbelief and determination mingling in his voice. Ryu nodded grimly. "Your abilities, your very presence, they upset their calculations. They can't let someone like you tip the balance. You need to be ready." Goku's resolve solidified. "Then I won't be caught off guard. I'll uncover every secret they have, and I won't let them control this city." In that moment, amid the crashing waves and the cold night air, a sense of destiny took hold. Goku felt the full measure of his dual legacy, the mortal struggle against a corrupt world intertwined with the latent, cosmic power pulsing within him. Back at his modest apartment, the hours ticked by in a tense, restless vigil. Goku sat before a small mirror, studying the scars on his face, a map of past battles and fresh wounds alike. "I'm not done yet," he murmured to his reflection. "There's more to this world than meets the eye. I will find it." His words were a promise, a challenge to the darkness that threatened to engulf him. Before long, he ventured once more into the urban sprawl. His steps carried him to a derelict subway station known to harbor a coalition of underground resistance fighters. In a cold, tiled chamber beneath the city, a ragtag group gathered around a flickering projection screen. Their leader, a wiry man with fervent eyes, announced in a low, urgent voice, "We've learned that the syndicate plans to seize the city's power grid by midnight. This is our chance to strike a decisive blow. We need someone who can breach their defenses, someone who understands both power and combat." Every eye in the room turned to Goku. In that silent moment, as the weight of their hopes settled on him, he spoke with quiet conviction. "I'll do it. I'll get inside, locate their command center, and disable their operations." Murmurs of approval and cautious optimism rippled through the assembled fighters. Plans were rapidly drawn and roles assigned. Yet amid the strategic chatter, Goku's mind churned with the enormity of the task ahead. The syndicate's inner sanctum was guarded not only by brute force but by a labyrinth of deception and hidden technology, a challenge that would test every facet of his strength. The hours before the operation passed in a blur of preparation. With the dossier, data chip, and hard-won intelligence in hand, Goku moved through the deserted corridors of the enemy's suspected command center, a neglected building on the outskirts of the city. The building's facade, scarred by time and violence, opened onto a network of corridors that reeked of neglect and danger. Every step was a calculated risk, every shadow could hide an ambush. As he reached the heavy, rusted door leading deeper into the facility, his heart pounded with both adrenaline and the calm certainty of destiny. Inside, the passageways were dim and oppressive. Goku's senses flared with every creak of the floorboards and every distant metallic groan. In one narrow hall, he encountered a cadre of elite guards. Their eyes were cold, their movements precise, a well-oiled machine of lethal intent. In a burst of controlled fury, Goku engaged them. Fists flew, feet struck, and every blow he delivered was an assertion of both his human determination and the latent, divine strength thrumming in his veins. The guards, though trained and ruthless, fell before the intensity of his assault. With each calculated strike, Goku carved a path through the enemy, driven by the silent promise to reclaim the city's future. After the skirmish, he pressed onward and finally reached the heart of the command center, a control room alive with the glow of monitors and the hum of machinery. Rows of encrypted terminals displayed streams of data. Goku inserted the data chip and watched as the screen filled with schematics and a countdown, an ominous timer ticking toward the planned blackout of the city's power grid. His pulse quickened. Every second was a step toward catastrophe. With steady, precise movements, he decrypted the files and copied the crucial data onto a secure drive. The information was damning. It detailed not only the layout of the enemy's network but also the timing of their next move, a plan that, if executed, would plunge the entire city into darkness and chaos. The corridors on his way out now echoed with the sounds of his labored breathing and the distant reverberations of alarms that had just been triggered. Every shadow whispered of danger, every creak in the ancient building hinted at lurking threats. Goku's escape was a tense, nail-biting journey back through the enemy's lair. When he finally emerged into the cool night air, battered but resolute, a small group of resistance fighters awaited him. Their eyes shone with a mixture of relief and renewed determination as they gathered around to receive the intelligence that could turn the tide. In the hushed aftermath, Goku found a moment's respite away from the adrenaline of battle. He settled in a quiet corner of the safe zone, a converted warehouse pulsing with the subdued energy of those who fought in the shadows. There, amidst whispered plans and hurried revisions, he allowed himself a brief moment to reflect. The weight of every encounter, the silent observer's parting words, Mara's cautious alliances, and Ryu's urgent warnings, settled into him like a mantle of responsibility. He realized that every step he had taken, every scar etched on his body, was part of a larger battle against forces that sought to subjugate this broken world. Outside, the city's pulse continued unabated, a relentless rhythm of hope intermingled with despair. Goku stepped out onto a busy intersection where vendors shouted, sirens wailed, and life persisted despite everything. As he passed by a group of young men debating loudly on a cracked corner, one slammed his fist against the pavement. "We can't keep letting them push us around," he shouted. Another retorted bitterly. "Whether we're the backbone or the rats, they pulled the strings. We're trapped." Their voices mingled with the city's murmur, each word a battle cry in a war for dignity and survival. Goku absorbed it all, the defiance, the resignation, the raw, unvarnished struggle of everyday life. His dual legacy, the cosmic echoes of ancient battles and the fierce determination of a man fighting for his home, merged into one singular purpose: to expose and dismantle the sinister network that ruled this urban wasteland. In the dark hours of the night, under a sky dappled with reluctant stars, Goku revisited the edges of danger. He retraced his steps to the safe zone, where a final, urgent knock on his door shattered the silence. A hooded courier pressed a small envelope into his hand before disappearing into the shadows. The envelope bore only a cryptic symbol, a sigil that resonated with a strange, magnetic familiarity. With careful fingers, Goku broke the seal and read the brief, unadorned message. "Meet me at the old train yard. Midnight. Come alone." No signature, no explanation, only the promise of another piece to the puzzle. The old train yard lay on the outskirts, a desolate expanse of rusted tracks and abandoned locomotives swallowed by weeds and neglect. Every step toward the yard felt like a descent into the heart of a long-forgotten nightmare. In the gloom beneath a rusted freight car, a lone figure waited, their face obscured by shadow. "You got the message?" the figure asked, voice low and gravelly. Goku nodded, his gaze never wavering. "Who are you?" a soft chuckle replied from the darkness. "A friend. Or perhaps someone who knows the truth you seek." Their conversation was brief, a coded exchange of half-truths and veiled warnings. Before fading back into the darkness, the stranger pressed a small data chip into Goku's hand. "This is just the beginning. They're planning something far worse than you imagine." Armed with this new clue, Goku merged once more with the restless city. In the following days, He scoured forgotten factories, hacked into dusty terminals, and navigated the labyrinthine back alleys to extract every scrap of intelligence. Every encounter, every near miss, every cryptic remark, nudged him closer to the heart of the Syndicate's conspiracy. With every discovery, his resolve deepened. He was no longer just a wanderer haunted by echoes of a divine past. He had become a warrior determined to defy the dark forces shaping this broken world. One fateful evening, as he huddled over his laptop in a cramped, dim room, streams of code and schematics spilled onto the screen. His eyes locked onto a countdown, a timer ominously marking the moment when the Syndicate planned to seize control of the city's power grid. His heart hammered with urgency. Every second counted. With deliberate care, he extracted the crucial files onto a secure drive. The implications were stark. If the Syndicate succeeded, the city would be plunged into chaos, its people left vulnerable to tyranny. Then his phone buzzed with a terse message from Ryu. "Meet me at the pier. Urgent." The pier, a forlorn stretch of concrete by the restless sea, had long served as a rendezvous for those who operated outside the law. Under a shroud of fog and the distant crash of waves, Ryu waited beneath a solitary lamp post. His face, drawn and intense, carried the weight of bad news. "I've been following the trail," Ryu said quietly as soon as Goku arrived. "The Syndicate is mobilizing. They're preparing an assault that will destabilize everything. And they're targeting you." "Targeting me?" Goku repeated, a mix of disbelief and steely resolve in his tone. Ryu's eyes narrowed. "Your presence, your abilities, they upset their plans. They can't allow someone like you to change the balance. You must be ready." Goku's jaw tightened. "Then I won't be caught off guard. I'll uncover every secret, and I won't let them control this city." On that chilly pier, as the waves crashed and the night embraced them, a sense of destiny solidified. Goku felt the full weight of his dual legacy, the mortal struggle and the dormant cosmic power converging into a single, formidable purpose. He vowed silently to be the beacon of hope in a world teetering on the brink of darkness. Back in his modest apartment, long into the night, Goku lay awake with his mind swirling with strategy and memory. He opened his battered notebook once again and began to write feverishly, a chronicle of encounters, coded messages, and insights into the enemy's operations. Every scribbled line was a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth amid a city defined by both despair and resilience. He recalled the observer's parting words. "Not a pawn, but a piece yet to be moved," and wondered if he could rewrite the rules of this dangerous game. Before dawn, as the city's feeble light crept over dilapidated rooftops and graffiti-stained walls, Goku left his apartment and blended into the urban throng. At a busy intersection, he paused to absorb the scene. Street vendors hawking their wares, neon signs flickering desperately against the morning gloom, and everyday citizens moving forward despite the weight of their circumstances. In the murmur of passing conversations, he heard the echoes of rebellion, a reminder that even in a broken world, hope fought to survive. That day, Goku made his way to a derelict subway station rumored to be a covert hub for underground resistance fighters. In a cold, tiled chamber beneath the city, a ragtag group of rebels huddled around a flickering projection screen. Their leader, a wiry man with eyes burning with fervor, announced in a hushed, urgent tone. "We've learned that the Syndicate plans to seize control of the city's power grid by midnight tomorrow. This is our chance to strike. We need someone who can breach their defenses, someone who understands both the language of power and the art of combat." All eyes turned to Goku. In that heavy silence, he spoke with unyielding conviction. "I'll do it. I'll get inside, locate their command center, and disable their operations." Approval rippled through the assembled fighters, tempered by the shared understanding of the stakes involved. Plans were hurriedly laid out, roles assigned with the precision of desperate hope. Yet, even as strategies were devised, Goku's mind churned with the enormity of what lay ahead. The enemy's network was vast, their defenses intricate, and his own inner battles raged as fiercely as the physical ones he had already fought. In the tense hours before the operation, every moment throbbed with anticipation. Goku slipped into the enemy's suspected command center, a neglected building on the city's outskirts, its crumbling facade belying the lethal intelligence hidden within. The heavy, rusted door opened into a maze of shadowed corridors, Every step was a calculated risk. Every silence held the potential for ambush. Finally, he reached a reinforced door that led into the heart of the facility. Inside, the control room hummed with the cold energy of machines and surveillance screens. Rows of encrypted terminals displayed streams of data. Goku inserted the data chip and watched as schematics and a ticking countdown filled the screen. His heart pounded. Each tick was a reminder that time was slipping away. With steady hands, he decrypted the files and transferred the critical data to a secure drive. The revelations were stark. The Syndicate planned to plunge the city into darkness by seizing the power grid, an act that would leave the citizens vulnerable and broken. The escape was a nerve-wracking rush. Goku retraced his steps through corridors that now echoed with the distant alarms of a system awakened too late. Every shadow, every creak in the old building, threatened to reveal him to enemy patrols. Yet he pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the information he now carried was the key to halting the impending catastrophe. Emerging into the cool night, battered but resolute, Goku found a small group of resistance fighters awaiting him. Their eyes shone with a blend of exhaustion and renewed hope as he relayed every detail of his mission. The data was shared in low, hurried whispers, a new chapter in the Resistance's plan to expose the Syndicate's grip on the city. Later, in the relative safety of the Resistance's safe zone, a converted warehouse buzzing with cautious energy, Goku allowed himself a moment of reflection. In the quiet corner of a crowded room, he gazed at a lone candle flickering on a rickety table. His inner dialogue was fierce. "I will not let this city crumble. I will be the catalyst for change, even if it means facing the demons within." Every memory, the silent observer's cryptic message, Mara's guarded alliances, Ryu's urgent warnings, merged into a singular purpose: to confront and dismantle the dark network that had seeped into every crack of this broken world. Outside, the city thrummed with life, a chaotic blend of decay and defiant hope. Goku stepped into the night, his determination as tangible as the cool air on his skin. The data he now held was not just intelligence. It was a beacon of possibility for a people caught in the grip of oppression. His next steps would demand every ounce of his strength, every scrap of his cosmic heritage, and every shred of human resilience. At a bustling intersection under the glow of neon lights, he paused for a moment. The faces around him, each etched with stories of struggle and survival, reminded him that the battle was not just his own. They were the heartbeat of a city on the brink, and he was destined to be their unlikely champion. A voice inside him, echoing the silent admonitions of ancient power, urged him forward. "This is only the beginning. The storm is coming, and you must be its lightning." As the night deepened, Goku's journey took him through one final gauntlet. He retraced his path to a forgotten rooftop that overlooked the sprawling urban labyrinth. Amid the flicker of distant streetlights and the murmur of restless crowds, he allowed himself a moment of introspection. The city stretched before him like a fractured mirror, a mosaic of light and shadow, hope and despair. He pressed a hand against the cold, rusted railing and bowed silently. "I will carve my own destiny. I won't let the forces that seek to control this world dictate its future." The horizon blushed with the first hints of dawn as Goku descended from the rooftop, steeling himself for the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. Every step, every heartbeat, was a defiant challenge to the oppressive darkness. The Syndicate's grip was tightening, and the whispers of a coming coup reverberated through the alleyways and neon-lit corridors. With the critical data safely in hand and his resolve hardened by countless battles, he stepped forward into the night, a solitary figure destined to ignite a revolution. Standing at the crossroads of destiny and determination, Goku felt the full measure of his dual legacy. The interplay of light and darkness, hope and despair, was etched into every scar and every breath. The city, with all its broken dreams and untold stories, beckoned him onward. Every silent moment held a promise that no matter how deep the corruption or how steep the climb, a new beginning was always possible. As he took one final look over the urban sprawl, a mosaic of decay, defiance, and flickering hope, Goku knew that his journey was far from over. The promise of redemption and the threat of annihilation danced together in the pre-dawn hush, a dark prelude to the battles yet to come. In that charged silence, he vowed to become the beacon of change for a city that had long forgotten how to hope. The night deepened its hold as Goku vanished into the labyrinth of concrete and shadow. Every step he took, Every encounter he endured wove him more tightly into the fabric of a conspiracy that reached far beyond mortal ambition. In the echoes of whispered warnings and the relentless hum of urban strife, the night draped itself over the ruined outskirts of the city as Goku trudged along a cracked, gravel-strewn road. The neon glimmers of downtown faded behind him, replaced by a barren landscape of rusted metal and overgrown concrete. Ahead, the silhouette of an abandoned dojo, its tiled roof partially caved in and walls streaked with the passage of time, loomed like a forgotten relic. Here, beneath a sky spattered with indifferent stars, he sought refuge from both external threats and the internal storm that had defined his recent days. Goku stepped through the dojo's broken doorway. The interior exhaled a musty breath of decay and solitude. Dust motes danced in the thin beams of moonlight slicing through shattered windows, and each step he took stirred echoes of memories not entirely his own. The atmosphere pressed down on him as if challenging his resolve to master the chaotic inheritance he carried within. He found himself drawn to a spacious training hall once vibrant with purpose. Now, cracked wooden floorboards and peeling paper walls bore silent testimony to neglect. Goku's bare feet met the splintered boards, and he paused to absorb the solemn dignity of the space. This had been a sanctuary of discipline once. Now it beckoned him with a promise of purification through sweat and struggle. Without ceremony, he began a series of fluid, deliberate movements, a series of kicks, punches, and stances that melded his natural fighting instinct with a refined technique he remembered only vaguely. Each thrust and pivot became a question posed to himself. Can he control this power without succumbing to the urge to destroy? The muscles in his arms and legs pulsed with effort as he channeled energy that felt both familiar and alien. A low hum of exertion filled the silence. In the reflective stillness between strikes, Goku sensed a voice. It was neither entirely external nor internal. It resonated in the spaces between his thoughts, a cold whisper that urged, "Unleash. Unleash what you are." He clamped his jaw and refocused, driving his strikes with precision. The wooden dummies lining the hall shuddered under the impact, their splintered forms absorbing the storm of his power. After several grueling rounds, sweat slicked his skin and blurred his vision. Goku paused near a cracked mirror. He stared into his own eyes that burned with determination yet betrayed a shadow of another, darker gaze. The reflection recalled images of a godlike presence, a memory of Beerus, of divine ruthlessness and an insatiable hunger for destruction. Goku's fingers trembled as they traced the scar along his temple, a physical reminder of the night his destiny had been rewritten. A sudden scrape echoed from the corridor beyond the training hall. Goku's breath caught, and his body tensed as he slipped into a crouch. The corridor lay dark, punctuated only by intermittent moonlight through gaps in the ceiling. He listened intently, each step of his heartbeat, every subtle creak in the decaying wood around him. "Show yourself," Goku called softly, voice firm yet edged with caution. His tone conveyed a warrior's readiness and a man who had been tested too many times by unexpected intrusions. From the gloom emerged a figure as silent as a wisp of smoke. An elderly man, clad in worn training gi, stepped forward with measured strides. His face was etched with lines of wisdom and hardship, his eyes luminous with an inner calm. The stranger's presence did not unsettle the oppressive silence. Instead, it added a layer of weight to the air. "I have been waiting," the old man stated, his voice low and deliberate. He paused, surveying Goku with an inscrutable gaze that balanced skepticism and compassion. "You practice here as if to silence a storm within." Goku's lips tightened. "Silence? I seek control. The power I wield isn't mine alone. I carry another's memory, another's fury. I must learn to guide it, not let it ravage everything." The man nodded slowly. "Control is forged in fire, not granted by the gods." "I am Satoru," he said, extending a calloused hand. "I have trained many who wrestled with inner demons. If you wish to master what you possess, you must face the truth of your power and the weight of destiny." Goku accepted the handshake with a firm grip, and for a moment, their eyes locked in a silent communion of purpose and struggle. The mentor's calm was a counterpoint to the tempest swirling in Goku's mind. "Tell me, Goku," Satoru began, "when the thunder of your strikes subsides, what remains in the quiet? Do you hear the voice urging destruction, or do you hear a call for creation?" The question echoed in the hollow space, lingering like a challenge. Goku's gaze drifted to a broken scroll pinned to the wall. Its faded calligraphy spoke of balance, a lesson lost in the modern tumult. He exhaled slowly before answering. I hear both. At times, the call for creation guides my hand. At others, the lure of raw power tempts me to erase all that stands before me. I want neither oblivion nor chaos, but I fear that I might already be on the path to either. Satoru crossed his arms and paced deliberately along the fractured floor. His footsteps punctuated the silence as he approached a battered wooden table strewn with relics of martial lore. He selected an ancient training staff, running his fingers along its worn grooves. Power is never impartial, he murmured. It demands sacrifice, forces one to choose between light and shadow. But choice always exists, even if that choice comes with pain. The mentor's eyes softened as he turned back to Goku. Every strike you throw, every breath you draw in training shapes you. The burden of Beerus's memories is not a curse. It is an opportunity to forge something new from the remnants of old destinies. Goku's voice dropped, measured yet edged with a simmering intensity. I fear that my heart might fracture if I let the destructive memory take over. Yet if I deny it, I may never grasp the full extent of my strength. I need to learn when to channel the fire and when to let it burn away my doubts. Then let us begin, Satoru said, placing the staff in Goku's hands. Balance does not emerge from stasis. It is earned through struggle. He stepped aside to reveal a cleared space where the two could spar. Strike at the air, feel the flow of your energy, and listen to the language of your muscles. Let your body speak what your mind cannot yet articulate. Goku gripped the staff tightly, feeling the rough wood pulse with latent energy. He took a stance taught by generations of fighters, centering himself as though bracing against an unseen wind. Satoru circled him slowly, his eyes tracking every twitch of muscle and every shift in posture. Do not aim to overpower your shadow, Satoru instructed. Rather, dance with it. Allow its strength to illuminate your own path. A moment's silence enveloped them before Goku launched a series of controlled strikes, each movement a calculated measure of power and restraint. The staff whirled through the air, its trajectory carved in arcs that shimmered in the dim light. With every contact against the wooden floor, splinters flew and dust rose, marking the tempo of his inner battle. Between strikes, the voice returned. It was not a roar but a quiet, insidious murmur. Break free, let the fury consume you. Goku gritted his teeth and countered with a block, the staff colliding with an invisible barrier. The impact vibrated through his arms, sending a jolt of resistance that forced him to rethink his approach. You must learn the language of restraint, Satoru called out as he observed the exchange. Force unchecked only breeds ruin. Goku adjusted his stance, channeling the discordant voices into a steady rhythm. The session became a silent conversation, a dialogue between his controlled technique and the tempest of memories. Every feint, every pivot, was laden with the weight of choice, to yield to the destructive call or to harness it for a higher purpose. As the minutes stretched into an hour, the duo's training reached a cadence that felt both ancient and immediate. Satoru occasionally interrupted the flow with pointed critiques. That move was too abrupt. Let it simmer. Allow the energy to build. Goku nodded, sweat stinging his eyes, and reset his form. I'm trying, he replied, voice raw with effort. The mentor's gaze sharpened. Try no longer. Embrace the challenge fully. Their conversation wove through the clangor of physical exertion. The mentor's measured tones contrasted with Goku's often terse, passionate retorts. They traded ideas as one would exchange blows, each impact a lesson, each pause a moment of introspection. The training hall, despite its desolation, transformed into a crucible where destiny was remade stroke by stroke. At one point, as Goku delivered a spinning kick that grazed an invisible target, he faltered. The voice of Beerus surged, a torrent of raw, unbridled force that nearly overwhelmed his disciplined control. His eyes darkened with the reflection of inner turmoil, and he staggered back, the staff clattering from his grip. Satoru was at his side in an instant, steadying him with a firm hand on his shoulder. The storm within seeks to scatter your focus, he said, his tone unyielding yet compassionate. Remember, mastery comes when you allow the storm to pass without surrendering to its chaos. Goku's breath came in ragged intervals as he fought to reassemble his scattered focus. I feel it tearing at the edges of my reason, he admitted, voice low and strained. It tempts me with the promise of power without consequence. Power without consequence is a myth, Satoru replied. Every action, every surge of energy, carries a ripple that touches those around you, and yourself. To control your power, you must first understand the cost of its release. A long pause fell between them as Goku absorbed the lesson. The dojo's silence seemed to intensify, each creak of settling wood punctuating their unspoken struggles. Outside, a distant rumble hinted at winds gathering beyond the broken walls, a reminder that the world was shifting, both inside and out. After a brief respite, Satoru guided Goku to a lower chamber of the dojo, a space cluttered with relics of past disciplines. Faded calligraphy scrolled along the walls, intermingled with martial symbols whose meanings were lost to time. The ambient light from a lone, sputtering lantern cast trembling shadows that danced across the uneven floor. Here, in the intimacy of forgotten lore, the mentor sat Goku down at a scarred wooden table. Tell me, what do you see when you close your eyes? Satoru asked, his voice soft yet probing. Goku hesitated, the internal cacophony momentarily quieted by exhaustion. I see two images, one of endless, calm blue, and another of burning red chaos. The calm beckons with hope, but the chaos, it feels like a promise I cannot refuse. Satoru tapped his fingers against the table thoughtfully. Hope and chaos exist not as enemies but as necessary companions on the path of growth. The blue may sustain you, but the red can sharpen your edge. Your challenge lies in blending them rather than choosing one at the expense of the other. A subtle tremor passed through Goku's hand as he tried to articulate his thoughts. But if I let the red dominate, I risk everything. If I lean too far into the blue, I might lose the fire that drives me. The mentor's eyes narrowed slightly. Fire refines metal, but it can also melt it away. Discipline is the forge on which strength is tempered. The key is to wield your flame, not to be consumed by it. Goku's gaze fell to the scars that etched across his knuckles, a silent record of battles fought, both external and internal. Every time I use that power, I feel a part of me erode, he confessed, voice dropping to a murmur. I wonder if I can ever reclaim what is left once the fury subsides. Satoru leaned forward, his voice steady. Destruction is not the absence of self, but the transformation of it. You must accept that pain and loss are steps on the path to becoming something greater. The shadows you fear may yet become the very canvas on which you paint your destiny. For a long, waited moment, the two men sat in the half-light. Outside, the night pressed in, thick with unspoken promises and looming perils. The distant hum of unseen engines and muted footsteps suggested that forces beyond the dojo's confines stirred. Forces that sought to harness power like Goku's for their own clandestine aims. Goku's thoughts churned. The training had unearthed more than physical strength. It had opened a window into the raw undercurrent of his soul. The memory of Beerus, a remnant of divine ruin and creation, flared within him, a beacon and a warning. He wrestled silently with the duality, feeling it shift like sand in his core. The clash between instinct and restraint became a palpable force that defined every fiber of his being. Do you ever fear that the path you walk will lead you to a point of no return? Goku asked suddenly, breaking the silence as he met Satoru's steady gaze. The mentor's lips pressed into a thin line. Every step toward the unknown carries risk. But regret stems not from the steps taken, but from the opportunities foregone because of inaction. His tone bore the weight of long years and battles fought both outside and within. I once faced a choice that tore my soul asunder, and I have borne the scars ever since. Yet without that pain, I would not have learned the art of balance. Goku absorbed the confession, the admission resonating deep within him. Then teach me, he said simply. Teach me to weave the flame and the calm into something that does not destroy me or the world around me. Satoru inclined his head slowly. I will, if you are willing to face your truth, no matter how brutal it may be. He paused, as though weighing the gravity of his next words. But know this, the forces that hunt you, the shadows at the edge of your destiny, they will not wait for you to master your inner war. They move in silence, ready to pounce at the moment your resolve falters. A chill crept along Goku's spine at the mention of these forces. In the distance, The echo of a tire screech or a hushed conversation beyond broken glass sent ripples of unease through the stale air. For a moment, the dojo seemed to shrink, its decaying walls closing in with secrets and threats yet unspoken. Satoru rose and walked to one of the dilapidated windows. He peered out into the black void, eyes narrowed as if deciphering hidden signals in the darkness. "I have seen figures moving at the fringe of this district," he murmured, more to himself than to Goku. "Men with eyes like predators, and whispers that speak of plans beyond mortal ken. They desire what you carry, a spark that could ignite the world anew, for better or for worse." Goku followed his mentor's gaze to the unlit street beyond. Shadows merged with the night, concealing movements that hinted at a lurking menace. "They tracked me?" he asked, his voice tight with apprehension. Satoru's expression remained inscrutable. "I do not know their full intent, but their presence grows bolder. The organization that seeks to control extraordinary power does not tolerate defiance. Your struggle, the battle within, is a beacon to them. And in time, that beacon will call them forth." The words hung heavy in the air, each syllable a portent. Goku's pulse quickened, and his grip on the training staff, now resting on the table, tightened as if to anchor him against the rising tide of external threat. The realization that his personal journey intersected with a broader conspiracy sharpened his focus. This was no longer a solitary quest. It was a battle for balance in a world teetering on the edge of chaos. "Then we have little time," Goku stated, his tone resolute despite the underlying tension. "I must master this duality before the darkness swallows me entirely." Satoru's eyes gleamed with a mixture of caution and determination. "Indeed. Every moment wasted is a gift for those who would see you undone." He moved back to the center of the room, retrieving a small, weathered pouch from beneath a loose floorboard. "Inside, you will find scrolls and talismans that have guided warriors before you. Study them, let their wisdom seep into your mind, but do not mistake them for answers. The truth you seek lies within your struggle, not on these brittle pages." Goku accepted the pouch with deliberate care, feeling the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future in its contents. He nodded once, a silent promise that he would not allow his inner conflict to render him vulnerable to those who lurked in the shadows. As the night deepened, the dojo transformed into both a sanctuary and a crucible. Goku returned to the training hall, his mentor's parting words echoing in his mind. The sound of his footsteps on the worn floor seemed to pulse with renewed urgency. Each movement was charged with the knowledge that mastery over his inner turmoil was essential not only for his survival but for the future of all he might affect. He resumed his drills, this time with a heightened awareness of his body's responses. The staff swung in arcs that bridged instinct and intellect, each strike a negotiation between the tender warmth of creation and the searing chill of destruction. With every rep, he strove to understand the rhythm of his dual nature. The memory of Beerus whispered at the edges of his consciousness, a reminder of the raw, cosmic force he could wield if allowed to run unchecked. The night pressed in around him as the training intensified. In the solitude of the dojo, Goku found that the physical exertion mirrored the internal battle waging within him. His muscles burned with fatigue, yet his mind remained alert, acutely sensitive to the interplay of light and shadow in his thoughts. He experimented with blending controlled strikes with moments of stillness, attempting to orchestrate the chaos into a symphony of disciplined force. In a brief pause between sequences, Goku caught his reflection in a fragmented mirror. The man before him bore the marks of relentless effort, sweat, determination, and eyes that flickered with the embers of something fierce and untamed. Yet, beneath that intensity lay the vulnerability of a soul in flux, one caught between worlds, striving to forge unity out of dissonance. The dojo's silence broke with a sudden metallic clatter from the far corner of the room. Goku's heart skipped a beat, and his eyes darted toward the noise. A small, rusted box had tumbled off a shelf, its contents scattering across the floor. He moved to retrieve it, cautious of further disturbances. As he bent to gather the items, a few loose coins, an old key, a faded photograph, his senses prickled with the unmistakable sensation of being observed. He paused, glancing over his shoulder. In the doorway, a figure stood partially obscured by darkness, features hidden beneath a hood. The intruder's presence was silent, yet it carried an unmistakable weight. For a heartbeat, the air crackled with unspoken tension. Then the figure stepped forward, and Goku's hand instinctively moved toward the staff that now rested against his leg. "Who are you?" Goku demanded, voice firm but laced with caution. The stranger lifted the hood, revealing a lean face lined with scars and guarded eyes. "I am no friend," the man said quietly. "But I am not your enemy either. I bear a message from those who watched your progress." His tone was measured, deliberate, a voice honed by years of survival in the shadows. "Your struggle is known far beyond these walls, and your power unsettles forces that prefer silence over revolution." Goku's grip on the staff tightened imperceptibly. "I do not wish to be a pawn," he replied, his voice steady despite the underlying tension. "If you seek an audience, speak plainly. Who watches? What do they want?" The stranger hesitated, glancing around as if ensuring that no unwanted ears lingered. "I cannot name them," he said at length. "Their motives are as murky as the undercurrents of power you wrestle with. But know this, your duality, your very existence, poses a threat to an order that has long reigned in the shadows. They desire to harness that power, to bend it to their will." A silence fell as Goku processed the implication. The idea that an unseen organization tracked him and coveted the destructive and creative forces within him stoked a fresh spark of determination and fear. "And if I refuse?" he asked softly, each word deliberate. The stranger's eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer. "Refusal is a luxury for those unburdened by destiny. The path ahead is fraught with choices that will shape not just your life, but the fate of many. The more you struggle with your inner tempest, the more you expose yourself to those who would see it exploited." He paused, letting the words settle like a slow drizzle. "Consider this a warning. Balance is not a state to be achieved, it is a battleground. And on that battleground, every decision has consequences." Goku's mind raced. The dojo, once a place of solitary training, now teemed with implications that reached far beyond his personal journey. His gaze locked with the stranger's, searching for any hint of deceit. "Why come here now? Why reveal yourself at this moment?" The man's expression softened, though his tone remained guarded. "Because you stand at a precipice. Your mastery of power is not yet complete, and your inner war leaves you vulnerable. I was sent to ensure you understand that the time for quiet introspection is over. The storm gathers outside these walls, and soon, you will be forced to choose sides in a conflict that transcends your own struggle." Before Goku could press for further details, a distant, rhythmic pounding reverberated through the building, a sound that resembled both footsteps and the beating of war drums. The stranger stiffened, and his eyes darted toward the dojo's exit. "I must leave," he said abruptly, voice laced with urgency. "Remember, your path is your own, but the eyes of destiny watch every move. Trust in your strength, and do not let the allure of unchecked power blind you to the consequences." Without waiting for a response, the intruder melted back into the darkness from whence he came. Goku remained frozen for a moment, the echo of the man's departure mingling with the pounding in his ears. The encounter left him with a palpable sense of foreboding, an awareness that the battle for his soul was only one part of a larger war simmering in the hidden recesses of the world. Drawing a shaky breath, Goku gathered the scattered relics and returned to the center of the dojo. He could no longer ignore the dual threats, the relentless pull of his own inner demon, and the external forces poised to exploit that very power. The ancient teachings in the scrolls now took on new urgency, and the weight of his destiny pressed down with renewed intensity. Satoru reappeared at the doorway, his expression grave. "You have encountered a messenger of those who seek to manipulate fate," he observed, his tone measured yet imbued with concern. "I feared as much. We must prepare, for the struggle you face now extends beyond personal mastery. It is a conflict for the soul of this world." Goku nodded, his eyes hardening with resolve. "Then show me what I must do," he said. "I will not cower before forces that try to exploit my power. I will master it, not as a weapon of destruction, but as a tool for balance." The mentor stepped forward, laying a reassuring hand on Goku's shoulder. "Preparation begins with awareness," Satoru advised. "Study the ancient texts, refine your techniques, and most importantly, listen to your inner voice. Only when you fully embrace both the calm and the storm can you hope to chart a course through the darkness." As the hours slipped by, the two men returned to their training. The earlier intensity evolved into a deliberate rhythm, a series of techniques and counter-techniques that blended the wisdom of old with the fierce determination of a man reborn. Goku's movements grew more confident, his strikes sharper, and his mind steadier as he integrated the lessons from both his mentor and the harsh reality of his newfound vulnerability. The dojo's silence bore witness to the transformation. With each calculated swing of the staff and every measured breath, Goku edged closer to understanding the delicate equilibrium that defined his being. Yet, even as he honed his craft, the nagging sense of an approaching storm persisted, a reminder that destiny, in its relentless march, waits for no one. Finally, as dawn threatened to break over the horizon, Satoru called a halt to their session. "Rest now," he urged. "Even warriors must yield to the need for recovery. But remember, every moment of rest is merely the pause before the next challenge." Goku, exhausted but resolute, lowered the staff and sank onto a worn bench near the shattered window. The cool light of early morning filtered through the debris, painting the room in hues of soft blue and gray. His thoughts wandered back to the stranger's warning, the murmur of unseen enemies, and the precarious balance he sought to maintain. In that quiet interlude, he resolved to study the ancient scrolls with renewed fervor and to train until his body and spirit became one, united against the looming threat that crept ever closer. Satoru settled beside him, his presence a steady anchor in the uncertain calm. "You have taken the first steps toward mastery," he said quietly. "But understand this, the journey ahead will test every fiber of your being. The forces that observe you are relentless, and they do not pause to allow introspection. Your next trial will not be fought in solitude but on a field where allies and enemies blend into one uncertain mass." Goku's eyes met his mentor's with a spark of determination that defied the fatigue settling into his bones. "Then I will be ready," he promised, voice low and resolute. "I will embrace every trial, every loss and victory, until I stand firm in my own truth." The promise lingered between them as the first rays of sunlight crept into the dojo, dispelling the night's shadows yet leaving behind the scars of darkness. Outside, the city stirred with a quiet urgency, a reminder that the world beyond the crumbling walls was already moving toward a conflict that threatened to engulf everything in its path. As Goku closed his eyes for a fleeting moment of rest, the distant sound of engines and muffled voices filtered through the stillness, each note a prelude to the chaos that would soon break the tenuous calm. In that suspended breath between night and day, destiny hovered at the threshold, waiting for him to rise, and to decide whether he would be the harbinger of ruin or the architect of renewal. The morning light revealed more than just the physical decay of the dojo. It uncovered the deeper fissures in a world on the brink of transformation. Goku's journey toward balance had become inseparable from a battle against forces determined to exploit the very power he sought to control. Every lesson learned, every scar earned, would serve as a bulwark against the encroaching darkness. Satoru's voice, now softer yet unwavering, broke the reflective silence. "This is only the beginning, Goku. The path ahead will force you to confront not only your inner demons but the ambitions of those who would see the cosmos reshaped by their own designs. You must remain vigilant, trust in your training, and trust in the truth that lies within you." Goku opened his eyes, the weight of his destiny settling upon him like the first heavy raindrops before a storm. "I will," he replied, determination resonating in every syllable. "I have fought my inner battles here, and I will carry that strength into whatever comes next." Even as the promise echoed in the quiet chamber, the distant murmur of approaching danger grew louder, a reminder that the storm was not a metaphor confined to his soul, but a tangible force gathering on the horizon. The day's fragile peace trembled on the edge of disruption, and Goku knew that his training had prepared him for more than self-mastery. It had readied him for the inevitable clash with the hidden powers that sought to claim his extraordinary gift. The chapter closed with the dojo bathed in the uncertain light of dawn, a place where discipline and destiny intermingled. Goku's eyes, reflecting both the fire of his inner conflict and the calm resolve to master it, stared out at a world poised on the brink of upheaval. In that charged moment, every breath and heartbeat carried the promise of a confrontation yet to come, a battle that would test not only his strength but the very essence of his soul. Somewhere beyond the shattered walls, in the deep recesses of the city and beyond the reach of ordinary eyes, the agents of the clandestine organization stirred. They had heard the call, a resonance that vibrated with the power of creation and destruction alike. As they prepared to move, the echo of their purpose interwove with Goku's own determination, heralding a future where every choice would tip the balance between chaos and order. And so, as the morning advanced and the first hints of day spread across the sky, Goku stood, wounded yet unyielding, a man determined to forge his destiny beneath the shadow of forces greater than himself. The calm before the storm was fleeting. In that charged silence, with destiny poised on the cusp of revelation, the battle for balance and survival continued, an endless interplay of light and shadow, of hope forged in the crucible of despair. The echo of his mentor's words lingered. Trust in your strength, for it is the only truth that can defy the coming darkness. As Goku prepared to meet the day, and the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead, the abandoned dojo remained a silent witness to his transformation. Its broken walls and faded inscriptions bore the memory of countless struggles, and now they bore witness to the rise of a warrior who would, with every choice, shape the fate of a world teetering on the edge of destiny.